Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed and we are exploring the map of human consciousness, the map of the soul's development that we are going through as we learn as human beings. Hooray! Now, so far, I guess we should introduce why we're doing that. This is what Socrates has pointed out to us is the pinnacle of philosophical development, because it's where we get the dialectic from, first of all. This map of all of the possible ways of being or thinking, ways of understanding the self. We get from Socrates' conversation with Parmenides, and we get this as an example of the dialectic itself. The dialectic is the method of philosophy, the method of thinking, the method of spirituality. It's how we make use of ousia and logos. As human beings, we can reflect on ourselves and wonder about ourselves. Who am I? What am I really? Where was I before I was here? Where am I going after I leave planet Earth? What am I supposed to be doing while I'm here? What is this mind I have? What is it that recognizes that I have a mind? How do I be in the world? All of these questions come through ousia, or self-reflection. And we have to use the word ousia because there isn't one in English. That's just the way it is. And it's a cool word anyway, so get over it.
You could be a gooner.
Okay. Ousia, also logos. We have the capacity for reasoned thought and language. So we put the two of those things that are our most evolved capacities as human beings together to figure out what we should be doing while we're here. That's understanding. Now, when I say understanding, I don't mean understanding how many beans there are in China. Comes down to that.
They're completely lying to you. Yeah. They're completely lying.
We mean understanding, those questions that I mentioned a moment ago. And that comes from using your mind to understand your mind. The source of understanding itself, pure intelligence, and understanding its source, the self. Now notice, while we can use understanding, and it's our highest activity in the physical world of time, mind and self are outside of time in two different ways, but they are prior to its expression through time, necessary for these ideas to exist all through time. The idea of scope for these ideas that we use in understanding, whole, part, same, different, and these principles that apply throughout all time, not just the physical principles that keep our physical world intact and moving the way it does, but the principles for our soul's development through this world. They also have to be eternal or have scope over the world. The example we use is, let's say this is a beautiful chicken, and it is. But then if it gets destroyed somehow, beauty itself doesn't get destroyed. The idea of beauty isn't diminished because of what happens in the physical world. That's the idea of principles having to be independent of the physical world. And that's what we've been reading in the text as Socrates points out to Jesus. Hey, if everything has to have a cause, even the greatest experiences have to have a cause, would you agree also that those causes have to be prior to their effects, superior to their effects, and independent from their effects? Now, that kind of line of reasoning, Socrates claims, is perhaps one of the highest lines of reasoning you can take with someone. The implications of that are the highest. And it's the most challenging, so it's often met with scorn when you point this out. So Socrates says, I'm very hesitant to talk in this way with people. Also, you have to be of a high level of intelligence to even what's the word that he uses? A high level of intelligence to be able to participate in this. Let's find the word. Okay, all the way down the bottom. As above, so below. Here we go. As it is above, so below. You have to be at a... The audience has to have a high level of intelligence, otherwise it will likely be rejected. There we go. That's the quote. The sources are independent. Therefore, what we use our understanding for, to perfect our understanding by reverting upon the model of intelligence itself, where we get all the terms or parts we use in understanding, but also we get the structure. That's called the dialectic, how those parts come together as a whole, giving us ideas of justice and beauty, the beautiful way they come into a whole, the necessary way they come into a whole for justice. And because it's outside of time, it's an experience open to everyone. It's open for everyone. You don't have to be a billionaire. You don't have to be in the Epstein class of capitalists, clergy, and conservatives. You don't have to be, you don't have to buy the franchise. It's for everyone. In fact, it's our purpose as sentient beings with the capacity for ousia and logos, or self-reflection and language. What we're also recognizing is we are doing it anyway. Whether you like it or not, you're in the game. The only difference is whether or not you take charge of your own existence. Because if you don't take charge of your own existence and actively seek to perfect that understanding with a capital U, in fact, let's call it dianoia. Dianoia is the Greek word which means understanding these models of mind and self that are outside of time, that are true, that are necessary for our good functioning in time, because it allows for our apprehension of beauty and justice, and it allows for us to use understanding well and not be dum-dums. Dianoia. If you don't actively seek the excellence of your dianoia, you will be doing a kind of shadow version, a distorted version of the dialectic, because that's thinking anyway. In other words, if you don't seek the good, you will be, by default, seeking the bad. There's no middle ground. There's no not seeking. There's no not being alive as a living being. You will always be thinking, acting, feeling. The difference is whether or not that thinking, acting, and feeling will be from the model of truth or the model of what's false. Our false pseudo models of excellence, beauty, and justice we gain from childhood, we learn from childhood as part of the human condition. Before we were able to use our logos in a sufficient way to question our authority figures, and when we were dependent in those relationships, so it might not have been the safest to question. Notice, all of the systems of oppression seek to create the same conditions within humanity. You are not free to ask questions of authority figures, says those fascists. You are dependent on us for your rent money, medical bill money. So the systems of oppression we live seek to recreate the scenario that their parents were playing. That's the game. The parental figures appeared just beautiful when we were too young to know any better. and that dictates the course of our life as human beings. Our soul seeks beauty, justice, truth, knowingness, knowing the good, having the good and knowing it as well. That idea of knowingness is a very high one because it means you know what it is you want as good, and you are more able to get it, and you have it sufficiently that you can know it. So we seek a kind of knowingness of the good, so much so that even its appearance when we were young and vulnerable takes the place of our soul, takes that place in our soul that it dictates the course of our entire life. That's called fate. That's not the logos of self, it's the pathologos, the sick belief, binding us to fate, making that image the most powerful force in our world, such that our life becomes seeking the conditions where we can play out that false idea of knowingness with impunity, whether it be being a billionaire or being a millionaire or owning a business where your employees are dependent upon you, and if they start a union or ask questions, then you can abuse them in the same way you were abused. Why? Because that abuse of the vulnerable becomes your idea of what it means to be just, beautiful, and knowing. That's for everyone. There are some that have a everyone's specific flavor or version of that is different, but it's the nature of all human problems, the pathologos. So it's not a blame or shame game. What we are seeing in our current world is what happens if we don't acknowledge that and we just give immense power to certain people so that they can play their pathologos out with impunity. Notice the model of beauty and justice is to inflict your own personal beliefs and opinion about what it means to be knowing on those who are most vulnerable, who don't know any better, and who can't speak back. I wonder why the Epstein class, the billionaires, the conservatives, or the political class that rule by belief, yes, the left-wingers are also conservatives if they're not fighting for true progressivism, even though they might call themselves Democrats or progressives. So the kings, the clergy class, the conservative class, the capitalist class, why is it that when they have all this immense power to literally do anything they want to go to Epstein Island and get into locked rooms with vulnerable children? Could it be that that is the model of justice, beauty, and knowingness that motivates their entire soul, their entire lives? Could we get an insight about the nature of the pathologos that motivates all human souls? Will that help us wonder why, if parents suffered a similar injustice, why are they so keen to play it out on their children? So there's no middle ground. It's either true or false. It's binary. What we are discovering is how to make the good choice, how to take control of our lives, well, not control because we're following a greater logos, and ideally following greater guidance from our dream master, the self, maybe. But how do we reclaim our life energy, seek our purpose, and escape our fate? By seeking the excellence of dianoia, the excellence of understanding, the dialectic. That's what we're doing here. Therefore, doing it can reach your highest excellence, and not doing it causes the greatest injustice. And as we've been reading, Socrates has been pointing out, by the way, the injustice that you inflict in this lifetime, you will have to pay out the repercussions of in a greater sense. I think he says 10 times or maybe 100 times in your next reincarnations. So if you are lucky enough to be born into this lifetime where you can engage in ousia and logos, you better make the most of it. The consequences will be dire to ignore your purpose. Not only that, if you are fortunate enough to come across this stream or a true philosopher, or you meet Socrates or Parmenides in real life, make the most of it. Do whatever you can. 2, do this one thing. Seek the excellence of your own functioning. You're doing it anyway. Seek to do it the best, which is the most fun. That brings us to the triad of self. Your greatest functioning, your greatest feeling states, emotional states, states of mind. Don't you want to be happy? From your true self. Don't you want to be authentic? Don't you want to know the truth? Don't you want to be yourself? Don't you want to know and show the self most freely, without masks, without having to be afraid of the implications of what happens if I show myself? So it's what we all want anyway. The difficulty is we learn to fear that as a learning that we have from childhood to justify that very injustice we're talking about. If when we are in a similar state to that good triad, the triad of the self, and our parental figures act in a way that's unjust towards us, we end up taking the blame for that and thinking there must be something wrong with that. Not only is there something wrong with that, I didn't even know there was something wrong with that, so there's something wrong with me. I could never have guessed, so there's something wrong with my mind. And I was just being my authentic self, so I guess there's something wrong with myself. I was pursuing my own goals, there's something wrong with my own functioning. And if these people who are wise and knowing because of look at how they look, act in such a negative way, then there must be something scary about that as well. Oh, and if I adapt their masks of self, these accepted states of mind within the family clan, and this accepted way of functioning to be a slave to this belief-based tradition, then, I get privilege. I don't get beaten, or I don't get my rewards taken away, or I get other rewards. I get a role. So it's a loyalty to that role tied to that negative triad of self, and our loyalty to it, a savage zombie-like loyalty. That's the nature of human problems, because A, we think we benefit from that role and that way of being, and B, we fear our true purpose, destiny, triad of self. So it's a fear of the good and a loyalty to the old because we think we benefit. That's the nature of human problems. That's what we're discovering. Therefore, the ideal use of our time here is to master the dialectic or dianoia understanding. And what we're also seeing is, hey, the highest use of that understanding is to map the development of understanding. How do we move from human ignorance to human excellence? Hey, welcome, Sus. To you, the Oracle says,
everybody should love sluts. I love sluts.
You should love sluts.
Debate weirdo.
And if you don't, you're a debate weirdo. Right, Emma?
The more holes, the better.
Exactly.
Calm your fucking tits.
But calm down a little bit. How are you doing, Sus? So, using our understanding to map the development that we make from belief, a negative triad, believing someone else, images, shapes and colors, it's called. I adjusted my sound, by the way, Sus. Does it sound better today? I adjusted my bust. I adjusted a bunch of sound settings. I hope it sounds good today. To map the development from belief, shapes and colors, some people call it, the appearance, the shape and color of what it means to be good. By the way, I sound fantastic. Hooray.
I'm always good, and that is what I stand for, being good.
Good all the time.
That's great. That's what I stand for. Also, I'm on speaker mobile, so that's great on my end. Oh, speaker, nice. Got a Bluetooth speaker. So, using our dianoia to reach the model of dianoia, which is outside of time. So, to reflect on what that is, Twitch app. I'm on Twitch app a lot as well. Soon we'll be able to change our settings once I get popular. I'm on pocket mode. Oh. I'm like a Pokemon. Pocket monster. I'm your starter Pokemon. What was I talking about? Oh yes. What would the name of my Pokemon be? Using our understanding to reflect on mind itself, which is the paradigm for understanding, as well as mapping the development. So that experience of pure intelligence, which is outside of time, has that causal scope over everything in time, would be one of those stages. Now, what we've also been saying is there's another cause even of that. That's the conversation Socrates is having with Jesus. Hey, Jesus, you've had a glimpse at that. Pure intelligence, you call it kingdom of God, you call it heaven, you have a lot of words to talk about it as analogies. One of the problems Jesus has had is he hasn't understood it, so people are taking his analogies literally. Literalism is a problem of belief. But the conversation Socrates is having is, hey, even that has to have a source. Here we go. My 4 moves are: Socratic Soul Shield. I like it. We need protection from the counterattacks from those lower on that map of hierarchical development will be triggered by those who are greater. So we have to be careful with how we introduce these ideas, because the further along it is, the further out of the reach it is of those people who are lower down. And many people are taught to respond to what they're unfamiliar with anger, hostility, savageness, cruelty. The more loyal you are to your position, the more you'll feel justified in human atrocities, simply because you are confused by that which is outside of your stage of understanding. And as it says in the text, death and destruction. That fear of those higher states of mind bring death and destruction that periodically sweeps across the land. When literalists gain power, people who take their position literally and not recognize it's just a part within a ladder. They cannot stand truths beyond their reach, nor do they have any desire to make up for their shortcomings. They believe they already have the truth, belief, and will destroy whatever stands in their way. When they seize control of these divisions, they reduce it to what they can understand and they burn the rest. Therefore, we need the Pokemon ability of Socratic Soul Shield, so that we can benefit everyone, our species, do our best to put an end to injustice and cruelty, create better relationships in our own world, while protecting ourselves from these counter attacks from those very people we are benefiting. Dialectical diamond dance. Yes, the dialectical diamond dance is the method through which we pass on this benefit. Guitar guillotine. Ooh. By the way, I'm going to be streaming music on TikTok as well as Twitch soon. So you can see my guitar guillotine maneuver on TikTok as well as Twitch soon. Serenade Grenade. and you can be serenaded. I'm a legendary bard-like Pokemon. I'll take it. Hooray.
Cool as a cute.
Cool as a cuke.
People don't logic their way into stupid positions. They stupid their way into stupid positions.
And we are dianoiaing their way out. So, the highest use of understanding would be to perfect our understanding by recognizing the model. Now, what's interesting about that experience being out of time is it's open to all of us at any moment. We said you don't have to be a billionaire or be in the club, but you don't have to wait for the right time. It's always open because it's outside of time. Or in the gap between each moment, if we understood, as we've been reading in the text, this is all in the text, by the way, just like a frame of a movie flashes before us and we're giving us the illusion of movement, so too our physical world. That's an understanding of the third hypothesis. How the intelligence in the gap, the divine luminosity of intelligence, can function to our physical world to create flashing moments that we can perceive as time so we can go through our learning journey. Second hypothesis and third hypothesis. Understanding is also the third hypothesis. So there's an interesting connection between how time is created from the model of intelligence and how we can ideally function in time through the dialectic, using those Pokemon moves through understanding. Now, the conversation Socrates is having with Jesus is there's also another cause to that. The self. That's our goal, to know the self. But notice, both the pure intelligence, which is causal of time and is the map or paradigm of time, giving us this map that we're after here, that's outside of time, but so too must its cause. Therefore, we've got two different levels of being outside of time. One that is outside of time but contains all of time, therefore making it the model. That's intelligence, the second hypothesis. And one being outside of time in a transcendent way. And we have been using the idea of the Venn diagram to explain that. All of the self-logos terms like whole and part are two different ideas. They're two different circles, but there is an overlap where they participate. You could also say in time, or out of time is prior to time. Out of time is another one of those primary duads, and being in time is another one. Therefore, if we look at that experience of mind or the second hypothesis as this, yes, it's out of time, but it also contains everything in time, which is why it's the greatest experience possible, because it is the whole that contains all of the parts. It's the highest expression of whole while containing its parts. It's out of time that also incorporates everything in time. See how those two ideas fit together? If it incorporates everything that happens in time, then necessarily it has to be all of the parts. So we can say these primary units of thinking, whole, part, same, different, like, unlike, in time, out of time. Wait, there's 6 basic categories. Whole, part, same, different, like, unlike, limit, unlimited or infinite, motion and rest, in time and out of time. Now, limit You can also break them down further, like to have a beginning, middle, and end are kinds of limits. So you can, but those are the 6 primary categories. 6 pairs, 12 gods, 12 Olympian gods. So the highest use of those, the greatest whole of the greatest parts, or our greatest superlatives, are used to describe their greatest experience. But what we're saying is, hey, there's also this part here. The part that's the whole that's not the parts. The parts that out of time that is transcendent of time. Giving us 2 spiritual experiences. One that is an experience and one that is itself transcendent of experiences, but still a kind of state of being. The penultimate, which means second last, and ultimate, the 2 qualities of spiritual states. And as they are out of time, we could refer to them as the gods, because they are out of time or immortal or eternal, giving us 2 kinds of categories of gods. One is a single thing because it's not, doesn't have parts, so it can't be a manyness. We could also say one and many could fit in here. Self and other. That's a primary set of, in fact, it's probably the most primary. Before you even think of one and many, you distinguish, that's not me, and this is me. It's like the very first thought, judgment we make. Therefore, if it's one, the God. If God is only a metaphor, a myth, a personification of these principles, which is what true theology is, as we just read, if you take it literally, you will be a barbaric savage. And if those literalists gain power, which they have today in the time of the recording, they sweep death and destruction throughout the world. That's stupid. Don't do that.
Gooner bait.
Just do Gooner bait.
You have the brain of a child if you think that.
And if they do that, they have a brain of a child.
Brain rot escalates.
And they'll just escalate the brain rot. The God. But if parts are a manyness, then this overlap, which is also it's a oneness, but it's also many, it's both together, the gods. So there's one class of gods that refer to an understanding of the aspects of pure intelligence, and there is a single idea of God that refers to this. Now, we could understand that as the whole that transcends parts, the out of time that transcends being in time. Or, as Parmenides says, the one self. So he uses this one distinguished from many and says, hey, let me talk about a pure one. Can I, you know how we talk about like a pizza being a whole pizza or a oneness of all of its parts? That's not a pure one. But you'll say, well, hang on a second, it's one pizza. Yes, it's a kind of one, defined by a whole of all parts. But a pure one doesn't have any parts. It's a pure one. There's only one thing. So it can't have parts, because that would be 2 things at least. The parts and the many parts. So he explains a pure one distinguished from the many. And he also says, hey, let's talk about a pure self. If you were the self, could you be, add 2 more words, same and different are another pair of words. Hey, when you talk about yourself, you don't ever talk about anything different, right? It's always the same as yourself. You're always the same self, right? Of course. And if I point to something different from the self, it's not the self. Yeah, of course. So therefore, the self can never be different from itself if we're talking about the same self. Therefore, understanding of a pure self, different from anything other or different, gives us an understanding of a pure self. And he says, hey, the same thing applies to the one. Therefore, a pure one can never be different. Will always be the same as itself, but can never be different. Therefore, whether you're talking about a pure self or a pure one, he brings the two together to understand each other. That's the one self. That's the first hypothesis. That's the peak of understanding of the self within the map that we currently have. The one self, or the God, the highest possible idea of God. Notice, believers don't have anything outside of time. They say, do as you're told or else we'll kill you. And then when you die, maybe you see God or go to hell. They are only ever in time. Their highest idea of one is singing Kumbaya to Jesus or to Trump or to Allah or to whoever. Therefore, those most ignorant of what is true and beneficial can act savage-like and call you a heathen or a heretic or a goyim or an infidel or a... What do the Mormons call the people who are not Mormon? Regular underpants wearers. Magic underpantsless. That's the savagery of human problems. A attachment to this and taking it as knowing, and instead of actually doing your fucking job and learning from the better people, trying to silence or kill or oppress those, and looking for situations where you have power over, either because you're a conservative, you're a religious person, or you're a capitalist. It's an elephant. So you can inflict your injustice with impunity, not because you want the person wants to be there, not because the person is benefiting from you like going to a doctor, but because you are fucking sadistic and sick. You want to imprison someone under your rule despite the fact you don't know anything, you're just rich. You don't know anything, you're just a religious believer. You don't know anything, you're just a fucking conservative pig. That's the nature of human problems. We all do it to an extent. These people just exemplify it because they have been allowed to take power in our world. Those people, as we just read, respond negatively to those who are trying to, people want to speak to because they actually have understanding and they can actually benefit and they don't seek to do harm. By the way, children. One reason why certain people want to be parents. Or the reason why these billionaires, religious people and conservative want to be in locked rooms with children on Epstein Island. Same shit, different day. So, we're gaining an understanding of what the God really is and what the gods really are. Now that's important because this understanding Jesus rejects when he is triggered. So part of understanding the model through the dialectic diamond dance, as our chatter said, is also recognizing the need for the Socratic soul shield. Because as we map our soul's development from belief to understanding, culminating in those two kinds of spiritual experiences of what is eternal, allowing us the model and map to function beneficially, because these are two kinds of true knowingness. True knowingness that our soul actually is seeking. But of course, belief is in that section of only in time. It's physical, shapes and colors. Belief is here and gives the fake knowingness that motivates human souls to human injustice. Therefore, the cause of human injustice is this fake idea of knowingness as an imitation of what they are blocked from and they are afraid of and they function in opposition to. Therefore, fate and cruelty and sadism. Our purpose, destiny. Our highest purpose, true destiny. Let's say our intended highest purpose. That's the game. So simply with this little diagram, PURPOSE, we can understand the nature of our human excellence, the nature of our problems. One is maintained by belief. Our development is through understanding, or dianoia. Understanding with a capital U, if you're English. You don't want to use the word dianoia, but you should. Philodianoia, therefore, is the art. Love of understanding. To move from belief to understanding. Now, as we move through that, we can map. We can map that development. All of the different ways of understanding or thinking. Our ways of thinking. Our states of mind. Feeling states. Emotional states. States of mind, and what you identify with as yourself, as the Oracle says.
Personality maxing requires you to look inward on a deeper level, and it's
Harder to fix, because then you have to make fundamental changes to who you are as a person, and it's because it feels like a much more core component of themselves.
that they don't want to change. Like, it's like, well, then if I change this, who am I?
So everything comes from that idea of yourself, states. Who am I? If I change my way of acting, it'll also come with a change of state of mind. But if I do that, who am I? And we've just said this is true because reality is the same thing. The true nature of the self is the one God. The states of mind are the various different aspects of pure intelligence that we can move in and out of and use in our thinking. So states of mind, second hypothesis, thinking, dianoia, understanding, dialectic, third hypothesis, and the cause, the self. So we make a movement from the negative triad of our pathologos, belief of those three things, through the logos, to the logos triad of self. To know the self by recognizing the logos. That's our job, to perfect the logos. You perfect it in the thinking that we do from the reading and reflection we do here. You actually verify that in your states of mind. And when you encounter a pure state beyond even experience, you can bring this understanding and experience with you apply it to something which is beyond experience, and recognize the self. Without that, how will you know what you're looking at? It's going to be different from anything else. It's going to be unique. Whether you get it in a dream or a mushroom trip or in a dance move or in listening to music, however you get it, we want to be ready for it by simply having perfected our understanding of it, which is a win-win because it helps us to get states of mind along the way that are good, helps us to function in a good way. It's a win-win.
What is this? The damn Opie and Anthony? Okay, whatever.
Opie and Anthony,
I'm too pure.
too pure for that.
Well, that's not true because I don't think so.
That's not true. So, and that's what we did last time. We recreated the hypotheses of Parmenides by recognizing that we can break down using that Venn diagram. We can add that in now, I guess. We can say, let's do it over here. How are we for time? This is going to be a short episode, and I'm going to do another longer episode later on today. I'm going to put the two parts together. So I started late because I was working on some audio. So that these two Venn diagrams giving us mind, which has its whole or identity, or ousia, knowing yourself, and it has its part version or functioning, or let's say activity, or logos. Okay, that's terrible circles. What? There we go. We have the physical world. H-Y-S-I-C-A-L. Physical world has its whole or identity or ousia expression, and its part activity or logos expression. And people who are identified or stuck there, they take literally their position and don't see it analogically as a reflection of a greater cause. This world is all there is. There's no cause to the physical world. And people who like beautiful things, there's no cause to that. It's just people are stupid. And fighting in the world, there's no cause. People are just savage. And it's just human nature to fight, and there's no causes. Those are the stupid people who are not solving problems in the world. Physical, P-H-Y-S-I-C-A-L, physical realm, world. There is the whole identity or ousia version, and its part. So functioning from that, you could also say model and copy, the functioning from the model, giving us the second hypothesis, which we just talked about, the state of mind of knowing it as a whole, of this realm here. And the third hypothesis, as we've been saying, everything we've been using in our understanding and reflection has been the terms or the structure of the self logos, the selfers terms, whole itself, part itself, etc., beauty itself, and the structure of the dialectic. People who take their shapes and colors, appearance of their parental figures as the whole of beauty, even though they were ugly and they were being unjust, they appeared beautiful. That's the source of our savage ignorance and loyalty. It's the fourth hypothesis. And people who are, as a result, say there is nothing better than mummy or daddy, or there is nothing better than Buddha. You can't go back beyond where Buddha went. You can't go beyond where Jesus went. That's heresy. You can't be greater than Muhammad or whatever the fuck. To reject any further development of understanding opposed to belief, or transcending belief. Belief opposes understanding, of course. Understanding can understand belief. You can't believe your way into understanding how to fix a car or fix a computer, but you can understand why people are blocked. So when you go into a computer class, you might have all of these beliefs about how computers work, but your teacher who has understanding can look at your beliefs and say, oh no, that's wrong, or you got that from an internet meme, or that's because your parents were stupid, or whatever. So understanding has a superior scope over belief, while believers who want to have a rulership over understanding can't. That's why all they can do is kill. That's why human conflict is when believers take positions of power over understanders, and because believers can't understand understanding, they can't even understand themselves because they're believers, they can only kill. That's why Trump does Gestapo, ICE, concentration camps and murdering of people. That's why they burn libraries, burn the books, and ban books from libraries. That's why they only drop bombs. That's why they never actually engage in a dialectic. It's all just speech-making bullshit. And their use of words is terrible because they're just believers in opposition to understanding. And their only way of being knowing is to imitate knowing, the second hypothesis, by inflicting cruelty on those most vulnerable. That's why they want to keep the world impoverished. We don't have to be homeless. We don't have to pay fucking rent to live. We don't have to pay for groceries. We all need these. They are universal human needs. The billionaires never have to worry about those things. That's these people. Fourth hypothesis people. And the only reason why they are not, one of the reasons why they're not solving problems is they want to keep people vulnerable, like the children in Epstein Island, like the children under the rule of parents where you are stuck in that house forever, until you can escape. They're imitating the same bullshit they got from their parents, and their parents lived that way, and their grandparents, and their great-grandparents, and their great-parents, were all the way back to this savage way of raising children. Cavemen huddling together in a cave prior to our development of Usia and Logos, and those that stayed in their cave and stayed stuck and loyal to their tribe member never ventured out and were never eaten by saber-toothed tigers. So it's a kind of remnant from our early evolution that we are still savagely employing in the way that we raise children, the way that we allow homelessness and starvation and prisons, and the way that we do education in our current society. We are ruled by fourth hypothesis ignorant people, but we can understand that as a stage of development. It's not a blame game, it's an understanding game. Therefore, fundamentally, our purpose is to cross this line from belief to understanding, which is what we're doing here. Because understanding is perfected and allows for the second, but also beyond. So one of our questions is, of the self, what would the Usia or the the whole, the identity, the knowing of the self of the ousia or the ousia of self be, and what would be its activity or logos. And which of those is the first hypothesis? And which of those is the 9th and 10th oxiding picture? Is our questions. We're still wondering about. We've also seen that there are ways of being that human beings can have that are defined by an opposition to those. If you are in the physical world, so you're still within the physical world, you're still underneath this line here. In the realm of the physical, but you say there is no logos in activity. There is no heart. So there's no logos in activity. Another way of saying there's no meaning. There's no meaningful activity. Logos implies development, hierarchical arrangement, growth, understanding. There's no parts. There's not even an activity that's worth doing. 9th hypothesis. What color? This one. In the realm of the physical, in the aspect of activity, but you're denying any meaningful nature of it. Nihilism. 8th hypothesis, you're in the physical world, you're interested in the whole. Hey, if there's a physical world of parts, is there a whole? Is there a fundamental principle behind it? Is there a greater meaning? Is there a greater meaningful whole, ousia? Nope. It's all just atoms knocking around chaos. Quantum physics shows us, it's not true, but some people say, that there's just all chaos at the primary level. There's no fundamental principles. Materialism. Everything is just physical. Parts. No whole. Whereas believers say there is a whole that reflects the divine, but we only can access it here in belief. We are trapped in the physical world. 8th rejects that. Materialism. Therefore, the 9th hypothesis the 7th, you're in the realm of mind, you're in the parts or activity, but you're engaged in logic. You're logicking your way through things. The logos is more than logic. So you're rejecting the logos while still in the realm of mind. Logic. Logos also, as we said, infers or presumes hierarchical development. So what you are logicking about is a back and forth between two principles that are not greater and lesser, as the Venn diagram says, but equal. Good and bad, hot and cold. So just, that would be, the world is a battleground between chaos and order, or good and evil, or devils and angels. Now, if you looked into that position, you would see that the way that you are reflecting and what is implied for there to be forces existing in the physical world that we can apprehend through thinking or reasoning implies the existence of the logos in a higher transcendent way. And that's what Socrates says is the real purpose of these positions people have. If you understand your own position, you will see it implies the existence, it requires the existence of the very thing that you're rejecting. Allowing So long as you do understand your position and you imagination, what it is that is being implied, you can potentially move from the 7th to the 3rd. You can be stuck in a physical world, rejecting any mind, thinking it's just the forces of good and evil, we're in eternal conflict, there's no end to suffering, and you can potentially jump all the way to seeing the gap between each moments and seeing how there is actually a connection. It's not a force on the physical world of bad guys and good guys and you need guns to shoot each other. Bullshit. There's actually a gap between each moment where there is a force in a higher plane existing and connecting to and relating to that lower plane for there to be these principles. That's a spiritual experience. In fact, there are some spiritual traditions like Kashmir Sufism that think that's the highest experience because it's a jump to the non-physical dimension of mind by seeing how there's an intelligent relationship between a higher and lesser, a greater and lesser force. So even these people who are stuck in this 7th level of ignorance can jump through a good conversation, through the dialectic, to a spiritual enlightenment state. Isn't that interesting? It's always open to us. There's a potential for even the most ignorant to have an enlightenment experience. Now, of course, as the ox herding pictures show, that glimpse might be a 3rd ox herding picture, but then you have to struggle and you have to you don't have to struggle, but then there is a process of integrating that insight that's mapped out through the ox herding pictures. You've had a glimpse of the ox, but now you've got to catch it. You've caught it, now you've got to tame it. Now you've got to ride it, etc., and eventually go beyond it. 6th hypothesis in this map of, by the way, you can move across, like we just said, but you can move upward. 6th hypothesis, how are we for time? Let me just check. I think I gotta go. I'm past 1 a.m. Oh, no. No, we're good. Why are we good? Uh-oh. Oh, okay. All right. All right, so we can keep going. I was going to take a pause, but no need to today. We'll keep going. So, 6th hypothesis. So you're in the realm of mind, but your position is a rejection of there being a whole of mind that you can identify with. Mind knowing itself and recognizing a higher aspect of yourself. Mind recognizing itself. Overcoming the fear of death, recognizing that this eternal state of mind is you more than any shapes and color image from the physical world. But you're rejecting that. There is no whole of mind. The best we can do is use our logic to invent some system that explains the whole of the physical world that we're in, because there is no actual model of beauty. There is no actual model of justice. A lot of good leftists are in the 6th hypothesis. They want a way of organizing things, and so they're very attracted to isms, Marxism, socialism, communism, etc., etc. Because it's a way that seems to be the use of the mind. They're not nihilists or materialists or down here. So they're higher. A use of the mind to explain the whole spammer.
You need to flood these platforms with fake people.
Die mad about it, bitch.
It's a scam. Worse than slop. Slud. This guy has found something beyond slop.
That's you, spammer.
But you shut up. You shut the hell up for a second. You're not. Who's an AI guy?
You're an AI guy.
AI slop.
AI slot. So there is a whole that we can reason about. So we're in the level of mind that should have scope over the physical world, but it's invented. It's like Mickey Mouse. We just made it up. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, you might say, well, actually, communism or Marxism or that seems to be a way that actually does explain the physical world, and we can think according to that will create a better world and help everyone. Absolutely. Absolutely. But the problem is, well, if it's just something we make up, then the fascists and believers can say, well, we'll make up our own one. Christian nationalism, a way of uniting the world under an ism that everyone has to do what I say because I'm the fucking Pope. Give me your money and your children. Or capitalism. Everyone has to do everything I say because I was born into a rich family. And by the way, my wealth always comes from exploitation. That's what wealth is. So everyone should be under my rule. Capitalism. And we'll say, no, we say Marxism. Or we say socialism, you say capitalism. Yeah, but who's to say what's right and wrong? It's all just made up anyway. There's no universal principle of the second hypothesis that's always true, that's understandable through reasoned reflection and experienceable directly. There's none of that. We are in the sixth. We are rejecting any higher principle. We think the idea of gods is stupid and juvenile because we grew up in the fourth where their idea of gods was stupid and juvenile. And instead of growing up and saying, hey, just because these guys were wrong doesn't mean there's no truth. Just because Trump's idea of justice is wrong doesn't mean there's no justice. Still fight for justice. So too, these people are often human beings who haven't yet gone through philosophical midwifery and are still suffering from the beliefs of their childhood. Sometimes they've left it. I'm not a religious person anymore. That's stupid. But they haven't addressed the effects. Therefore, the problem of the sixth hypothesis is we're rejecting universal truth. We're rejecting a lot of things. Fundamentally, we're rejecting the second hypothesis, the paradigm of reality. The paradigm of reality for our society and our species, but more fundamentally, the paradigm of reality for our own soul's development and our own consciousness or intelligence. The isms. Now, as I just said, hey, yeah, definitely a way of sharing wealth equally to meet needs equally based on understanding and not hoarding and oppression is a better system. So surely there'll be an ism that works. Therefore, these positions experienced by human beings are not mutually exclusive. In other words, you can be someone who has an understanding of, thumbs down, thumbs up, understanding of the second hypothesis and recognizes that the best way of implementing that model of beauty and justice could be a transition from capitalism to socialism through Marxism into a logos-based society. And you could call that logos-ism if you wanted to. Therefore, you might say, well, okay, so I can be in the second, but also recognize that there are certain isms that are more aligned with the true paradigm. And I can use that to understand the physical forces of hot and cold or good and bad, but also understand that that's what many people do, but really it's a playing out of belief and understanding, which is the third hypothesis, giving me a way of being that I could have in my life where I function through this box. Second, third, sixth, and seventh. Now, I might be mainly in the second hypothesis, and then a lot of the time in the third, but then when I'm doing, political stuff or social stuff, I'm more in the sixth and seventh, but mainly I'm ruled by the second. And then secondarily, when I'm doing dialectic or dream analysis or reading, I'm in the third. By the way, the author of the book that we're reading has also recognized this, and he created something called the cube. The cube is an attempt to map the fact that personality types are a kind of combination of these 8 positions, which are also ways of functioning, states of mind, identity of self, that we can move in and out of, that we can jump between. One seems to be ruling more than the others. So he created a map of how these possible ways of thinking, by the way, this is all Parmenides, therefore we can understand why it's called the greatest book never read, because very few people read it. Thankfully we have a Balboa translation so we can read it properly. Accounts for all of the possible ways of being that all human beings can be in, all societies can be in, because that's all that's possible. There's only these 8. The 9th including the self, but we're not on the self yet. So if we have the second as a cube, underneath it the third as a cube, the 6th, the 7th, and behind that okay, this drawing's getting a bit messy. We can put all those individual cubes together and create a giant cube where we've got 2, 3, 4, 5. Which means this is also 2 because this is the other part of 2. Because you can imagine these as cubes stacked together. So let's give them a color. So that's the third. That's the 5th. Okay, this is a bit messy. Oh no, that's fine. The second, this is a different color. Let's give it maybe this color. Second, which makes this the second up here. Fourth down here. Same thing for let me think, what would be the opposite of this? So the inverse, the rejection of the third is the 7th, so behind the third is the 7th, making this the 7th there. Rejection of the second is the 6th, so behind the second is the 6th. 6 is behind there. And of course, rejection of the 5th is the 9th, the lowest possible way of being, nihilism. There is no meaning, there is not even parts. And of course, behind the 4, oh, 9's fine. Color's a bit dull. And therefore, behind the 4 is the 8th. So this is a map Can't see it on my picture, but behind the 4 is the 8th. Oh, and behind the 2 is the 6th. There you go. Make a different color. So, ugly looking cube, but you get the idea. Taking these maps, hey, are you a sort of person in the physical world, or are you a sort of person in the mental world? Are you a shapes and colors person, or do you think? By the way, is your thinking only governed by logic? And you think all thinking is inventions? We're inventing a system? Or do you think that we discover truths? Is 2 + 2 an invention? Or is it a discovery of something inherent about reality? Therefore, similarly, is beauty and justice, how our society, our relationships, our lives should be ordered, is that also an invention? Just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and see what fits? By the way, modern science, torture Mother Nature so she reveals her secrets, is the ethos behind modern experimentation. I think that's a Bacon quote. Or are you in the second and third, which is where we're supposed to be? This is the best. The second is the best we can do as experience. The third is best we can function in time. That's our ideal. Or do you reject that? So you're in the realm of mind, but you reject the non-physical. 6 and 7. You're in the physical world and you reject any meaning in it. 8th and 9th, materialism, nihilism. You're in the physical world and you think there is a mind, but you can't connect to it. But you can sing Kumbaya and identify as a Christian or a Muslim or a Buddhist. 4th hypothesis. By the way, that defines everyone's problem, because we get our own version of this, a version of a belief-based self-identity from our family clan upbringing as the root cause of all human problems, called the pathologos. Which is why we can break down the functioning of people into different ways, but if we want to understand all human problems and our human purpose briefly, succinctly, it's simply a movement from the 4th, where our problems lie, to the 3rd, which solves problems. That's it. Crossing this line here, 4th to 5th, 4th to 3rd. Are you someone who is in the physical world and you reject even the possibility of there being a connection to mind? Even if there was a God, he's long since abandoned us. Even if there was a meaning of life or a transcendent experience, we don't know it because surely someone should have had it and talked about it. Yeah, they fucking have. They have. Lots of people have, you idiot. Socrates, that's his whole thing. Oh no, but I didn't hear about it. Well, how were you? When someone tried to talk to you about it, were you a dick about it? Because I've been talking about this my whole fucking life, and pretty much everyone's a dick about it. I've only found one online community ever that has been supportive of this kind of reflection. Thank God for the internet. I haven't found any physical groups that are interested in this. I have found one person who did his best to create a group that was reflecting on this in California. But we can understand why that is. It's not a blame game. If you spend your life without having reflected on the beliefs that influenced you growing up, you will either stay in those or you'll likely reject the possibility of the divine. So you'll move from the 4th into saying, well, maybe there is a God, but we can't know about it. Well, really? Or maybe you weren't listening. Or maybe you were a dick when someone tried to talk to you about it. I'm in the 5th. I've left my religious upbringing and now I'm in the 5th. We can't know God. Or I've left my religious upbringing and saying there is nothing meaningful. I'm a materialist. Or I've left my fourth belief and I've said there is no meaning in anything. What kind of a God would create a world where we were lied to in our childhood, and then even if we escape that, all we are met with is materialists doing science, creating nuclear bombs and hand grenades, or people running around atheistly saying there is no meaning of life. We can't know where we're going when we die. We can't know the reason for our existence. We can't know where we were. That's fucking stupid. What, we're here without... What's the point of evolution and reincarnation if we don't remember what we did? What's the point of being here if we don't know where we're going? Because we're going to fucking die. Shouldn't we know where we're going? If I met with those people who say, no, you can't know where you're going, fifth hypothesis, or no, there is no meaning, there is nothing metaphysical or intelligent, materialists, reductionists, then you might say, well, hang on a second. We've either got these believers who talk about the divine in a stupid way, these materialist scientists who say there is no divine, or these guys that say, well, maybe there is, but we can't know it. What kind of a God would create this stupidity and confusion? That sounds like a stupid, sadistic, torturing God. Therefore, there is no meaning. There's no point in anything. If my choice is between the fourth, eighth, and fifth, I say no. I say go to hell. All of these are stupid. Ninth hypothesis, the worst, nihilism. Now notice, it's not a blame game. We completely understood that person's way of being, why he was led to that conclusion. Notice, that person, fourth, eighth, might have started with the fourth from childhood, said, okay, well, maybe there is a God, but I can't know it. Fifth, maybe then moved to the eighth, got into science, reflected on that whole way of being and concluded, well, that's all garbage. There's no meaning. So we can understand it's not a blame game. Justice isn't about hurting people for their problems. It's about creating the conditions for reflection on their problems. Open-mindedness and rationality. That's it. Ousia and Logos. That's the best we can do. Ousia and Logos. That's all we have to work with, because even those who shut down reasoned self-reflection on causes to solve problems and help people are still thinking in a way to do it. They're still using a kind of Logos, and they're still reflecting on themselves enough to reflect on their stupid beliefs about hurting people is somehow good. So they're still using a shallow form of Ousia. It's like there's an Olympic-sized swimming pool in the second and third hypothesis, true Ousia and true Logos, but they're instead swimming in the kids' pool filled with piss, like little kids just pissing in the pool all the time, and it's very shallow. They only have enough self-reflection to reflect on their stupid beliefs, and they've got only enough Logos to reject anything higher. That's the nature of all human problems. So also, there's a little box, 4, 8, 5, and 9. We could find that on the cube. Yeah, so it would be under here. So if you imagine the bottom side of the cube, it would have 4, 5. So if you like tilt it that way, if you can use your imagination, and underneath, and the backside of that 8, and the backside of 5, 9. So that would be the state of mind of this person. Ruled by their false beliefs. Maybe living in the world as a materialist, 5. Occasionally having moments where they think there might be a God. Maybe they have an insight every now and then, but then conclude, well, he's abandoned us. They may be ending up in the 9th. Black-pilled. And then the fascists in charge, the Epstein class, which we know they have done, targets those nihilists and say, hey, join us. on 4chan. Join us as Groypers. Join us on our Joe Rogan podcasts and Tim Pool podcasts and Nick Fuentes podcasts, where the billionaire fascist Epstein class sick pathologos people will abuse you and get you to create a world where we're in charge. That's literally what has been happening the last 20 years. Therefore, it's very important for us to understand the positions people are in, their psychic states of mind, how they got there, and how we can help them progress. Because if we don't, there's no neutral ground. The sadists will abuse them. But also, that's secondary because it's important for you to do this. To recognize your personality type, how you got there, how you can understand the parts within this map of the hypotheses, how you can recognize that every one of these can allow for a movement to its opposite, but also there is a movement through what we do here, through reading about the Logos, that allows for an upward movement. Pretty neat. What do you say? Pretty neat?
Drop the attitude, man.
Oh, I'm sorry. My attitude was a bit bad, I suppose.
All of these rights that you get to enjoy, all of these civil liberties that are protected, happen because people stood up and said something.
Exactly. That's what we're talking about. We are gaining the understanding for us to stand up and say something about what happens to those here being exploited by those here. And how we can evolve ourselves to greater personality sections of the cube. That's the cube. Now, notice there are lots of secrets to be found in this cube. The relationships, the movements, how you could reverse the cube. Hey, you know what's not on the cube? The first hypothesis. How do any of these positions relate to the first hypothesis? These are all objects for you to wonder about, which is important because Socrates has been saying the new class of philosophers, the new way of being for mankind, the necessary way of being for mankind, is one where you pick up where we left off, but also add to the tradition. Meaning you can wonder about this cube when you're standing in line, when you're sitting on the bus, when you're doing your gaming, you're playing with your cats. You can wonder about the cube and come up with new ideas to share with your friends, and maybe even new insights to add to the tradition. This is where we are as humans. If this map is the greatest thing we could do, as a principle, if the greatest thing we can use our understanding for is to map the development of understanding, including the ideal of understanding, then by definition, this hypothesis would be the greatest work of rationality, thinking, human beings. Applying it to our soul's development, which including the ox-herding pictures, would be a development of where we are as a pinnacle, because it's not just reason, we're human beings. So therefore, some sort of integration between this and the ox-herding pictures would be the greatest thing we have developed as human beings. That's what we're being asked to do by Socrates, outside of time, in this book, which is the greatest book fucking ever. It's a goddamn banger. Recognizing that these states of beings we move through as personality types would be an even greater stage of development or level of human achievement. That's the cube. If we could integrate the cube and the ox-herding pictures, that would be even better. This is where we are. Hey, applying it to your world and actually putting an end to the fascism and the human suffering and torture and abuse of children and human beings and our planet, be even greater. We've applied the cube, the ox-herding pictures, the hypotheses, to our world. maybe we would learn more things. Maybe that would awaken us to a new kind of species that will allow us to participate with greater intelligent beings within a greater cosmos. Maybe that's necessary. Maybe if you were an intelligent being in the cosmos and you saw that there is a species that is giving all of the power and wealth to the most ignorant people, and they use that to murder people on millions and torture and murder children for fun in their little holiday resorts, you might not want these fuckheads a part of a cosmic galactic alliance. Maybe we've got to heal ourselves from the ignorance that motivates such actions to put an end to hurting people, murdering people, even the bad ones. We need to understand what's required to remove that sickness so that we can be a good member within a cosmic species within a greater cosmos. Maybe that's something we can, again, imagine and wonder about. But this is where we are. This would be necessary for doing that. Now, another way we can add to this tradition is recognizing that if there is a model and activity from that model in the 4th and 5th, or its rejection in the 8th and 9th in the physical world, if there is a model and an activity from that model in the realm of mind as well, but there's this other section of the Venn diagram of self. Does that mean that there is both a model or an ousia or a knowingness of self and an activity of self? What would that be? And of course, one of the clues we've been given is the fact that the highest, while Plato might have reached the second hypothesis and has definitely developed a high level of mastery of the third, all through Plato's dialogues, except for the ones that are accounts of, Socrates' conversations with his teachers, like the Parmenides and the Symposium. When Plato is doing the work, it seems, he's limited to the second hypothesis. He took, in the Republic, when asked about if justice comes from having an experience of the second and integrating it into your way of being through the third, the art of the dialectic being the highest art human beings can do as the activity of the philosopher king, his friend Glaucon, who he was talking to, his student, said, well, okay, if this is the sun rays, what's the sun? If this is the experience of the good, the eidos of the good, the idea of the good, capital I, not concept, the beholding of the good, what's the good itself? He goes, no, I can't do that. I can't talk to you about that because you're too blocked. It's too far up that ladder for you to be able to apprehend. And the only way you can remove your personal blocks is through dream analysis. So everything we've been learning, Glaucon, about this map and the use of the third hypothesis dialectic to purify your fourth hypothesis beliefs, to climb this ladder, you need to apply to your dreams to get the personal specifics. While this map is universal, while the ox-herding pictures are universal, while the cube is universal, the specifics you need to apply it to what specifically is your problem and your stage of development you only get from your dreams, says Socrates to Glaucon. Meaning, necessary for the movement to the first hypothesis, or the self, knowing the self, is dream analysis. Not interpretation, dream analysis. Oh, we have a person on the chat. Hooray. Welcome, chatter. I am familiar with Plato, more so Aristotle. They shaped my love of philosophy. I still live my life in accordance with a lot of their teachings, but The underlying metaphysics is what bothers me these days. That does not detract from all of the ideas themselves, but I can't align it with it anymore. Too many strange metaphysical commitments for me. Tangent. You can just keep going. Oh, interesting. So what we're doing is we're learning a map. So what you can do is, and again, all of these videos are on YouTube. You can find a link and you can go through them at your own pace or whatever. But what we've been doing is nailing down a map that will give you an overview of all possible positions you can have. Now, the more that you nail it down for yourself, the more that you can recognize, hey, I was once into Plato. Where does Plato's position fit on this map? I was just talking about that. He seems to have had a glimpse of the second. He seems to be doing okay with the third hypothesis, understanding. He seems to be blocked from the first hypothesis. Therefore, we can understand Plato's state of mind, but also, hey, having a glimpse of the second isn't the same as having a mastery of the second. Therefore, we need to also apply the ox-herding pictures, because that's the stages of movement from a glimpse into mastery. So we can use the ox-herding pictures along with these hypotheses of Parmenides to see where Plato got. But then I got interested in, yes, it's the divided line. Exactly, it's the divided line. Very good point. So, at the end of Book 6 of the Republic, let's do it. Let's do it. I didn't suggest it. The chatter suggested it, so I'm going to do it. So there's my out. Hey, he took these direct apprehension of your mind knowing itself as the greatest experience, the understanding as its activity derived from that model, the second and third. He took the imitation belief in the physical world and its activity, shapes and colored thinkers who reject anything higher, and he put them on a line that our chatter is talking about, called the divided line. So take a line, divide it by a certain principle. Now, the ratio that he asks us to divide this line is a puzzle in the sixth hypothesis. Its relationship to the logos, the great ratio, the golden ratio. Anyway, let's use the golden ratio, why not? Which is kind of like close to a third. Like when you do film, you learn that you want to put your if you've got a shot, you've got a shot you're doing in photography or film, divide the shot into thirds and put the main character here, slightly off center. It looks better. It's more beautiful somehow. Now, second year photography, they say, well, actually, thirds is just a shorthand. What actually it is what is it? What's the golden ratio? I forget. I'm gonna have to look it up. It's not actually, it's close to a third, but it's actually golden ratio. 61% or 62%, not 66%, which would be a third. So not quite a third. So 60, 66, 62% of the way. Yeah. So between like a third and a quarter, 62%. Okay. So quarter would be $60.75. Yeah, other side of the quarter. Yeah, ignore that. Okay, well, so closer to 62%. and put the person there. Anyway. That's a little bit of an aside. The relationship between the golden ratio, because the golden ratio is related to beauty. But also, the thing about the golden ratio, it isn't a simple fraction. In other words, for the golden ratio, you've got 1. No, it starts off with 0.38 is to 1 as 1. The next one is 1.62. In other words, you can't fit 0.38 into 1. You can't put 1.62 into 1. So every stage is incommensurate. Now, why do we care about that? Well, there has to be a cause. That reflects the fact that every jump within these divisions are different. We talked about the ox herding pictures as the development or the integration. Development or integration of specifically a glimpse of the second, and how you use that to remove your false beliefs in the fourth and fifth and develop an understanding and mastery, and then eventually be able to move into it. Now, the second hypothesis is the first of the two kinds of spiritual experiences. So it's about spirituality. But that principle applies to any stage. So you can have a glimpse. You can be a nihilist and think there's nothing that's real, but have a glimpse of there being a physical world. But then you'll have counter attacks from your old position. No, that's just the Matrix tricking me. I'm back to a nihilist. But then you fight with it. No, actually, these scientists are doing something, and I can actually use my computer and blah, 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 blah. A level of integration allowing you to integrate that position. But the position itself is incommensurate. You can't be a nihilist in the ninth and say there is no parts, and a materialist and say there's only parts. They don't fit together, just as the terms within the golden ratio don't fit together. That's the point of it. That's why we need both the hypotheses and the ox herding pictures, because every stage is a jump. But it's not just a jump, because there are two fundamental forces we deal with as human beings: the logos, as we move up, and our pathologos. This pathologos, false beliefs that we carry about ourself, that dictate our states of mind, that cause our thinking and functioning in the world, that keep us trapped in our repeating dramas in our life, in our daydreams, in our night dreams especially. That has a force. The savage loyalty that human beings have to their ignorance is the most powerful force in the physical world. That's what the ox herding pictures describe. So there is two kinds of movements. There is the ox herding incremental development within a stage, and there's the incommensurate golden ratio jump to a different stage. Just as our highest functioning in the world as human beings, the art we are here to master, is the third hypothesis, dialectic. That's very different from experiencing everything all at once. You can do understanding in your body with people as you explore your dreams, your problems caused by the fourth, the reading that's helping us move. You can't do the second hypothesis in your body. So they say if you're having a second hypothesis experience and you're driving, pull over to the side of the road. Can't do both. Now, the greater you can integrate that, the greater that can become your state of mind, either as a memory or maybe in some higher intuitive sense, allowing you to do better with your dialectical functioning, because the dialectic uses that. It uses those terms and that structure. It uses that as the model of that's the model. That's where beauty. Hey, you want to live in a just world? Well, who's to say what's right and wrong? Who's to say what's just? 8th, there is no justice. 9th, well, there is, but it's a fight. The Republicans will fight for their idea of justice, and that's just as true. And just like the modern Democrats say, we need to let them do their fascism, because who's to say? 7th hypothesis, everything is relative to personal opinions. See? What is justice? Oh, it's really here. Understandable. Beneficial if you use it through understanding. Verifiable in your own direct experience. That's the model. That's where justice is and beauty is. Necessarily, because you can't see it in the physical world below this line here, 4th, 5th, 8th, and 9th. You don't see beauty walking down the street, but you see its effect as adjectives, a beautiful streamer.
I'm cute. Like, it's cutie pie.
That's me.
I'm joy maxing, okay? And if I aura mog you because I'm joy maxing so hard, that just sounds like your cortisol levels are spiking for no reason.
That's right, and I'm joy maxing. That's why I'm so beautiful. You see it as an adjective, but you eventually, this is, by the way, Socrates describes this in the Phaedo. This is how I got into philosophy, says Socrates. I had to ask the question, where does this idea of beauty come from? I didn't learn it anywhere. I've never seen it in the physical world, but it seems to be the thing that compels everything. I wouldn't be here. Like Socrates said, I asked one of my teachers, what's the reason? What's the cause for me being in this classroom? He goes, oh, because you've got bones and sinews. A physical explanation of causes. And Socrates says, no, you idiot. He says,
I'm sorry that you have a loser mentality about progress and you think that there's nothing you can do about it.
He says that to his teacher. Because if I didn't think it was good or just or beautiful for me to be here and not somewhere else, dem bones and dem sinews would be boning and sinewing themselves somewhere else. You idiot. So then he went looking for someone who was talking about mind. Thankfully, he found Parmenides. So what? Right, so these are all incommensurate jumps. But the cube says we do jump between them at times in our life or during the day, giving us the personality types of the cube. Our higher stages we can have a glimpse of, but there is a development of integration. For every new insight, we have to do dream analysis. Why? Because dream analysis is the highest expression of the dialectic. And what does the dialectic do? Two things. Helps you develop an understanding of that new insight and helps address the false beliefs that prevent you from integrating it. If you had a new insight about how great you were, you'll face two problems. Number one, understanding that insight so you can keep it, go beyond, go further, and all your false beliefs that say, hey, screw that, you suck. The beliefs that say,
I've been a bad little girl.
that you're a bad girl,
Get the fuck out!
and says, get the fuck out. You have to do both. Midwifery and philosophy, the two aspects of the dialectic, purifying your pathologos false beliefs and perfecting your understanding. What it's like to go through that is the oxherding pictures that we've been reading. Parmenides completely shit on his ideas though, initially. Well, not shit on them. He wasn't that harsh. Socrates came in with saying, hey, you guys are talking about sameness and difference being together, or likeness and unlikeness being together. That makes no sense. They are defined by their opposites. You idiot, says Socrates to Parmenides. But look at this Venn diagram we have. This Venn diagram also applies to those terms, whole and part, same and different, like and unlike. All of these non-physical ideas that we use in understanding, but we never see physically. Socrates says you jabronis are talking about experiencing them. And when you do, they seem to be together. Just a way of talking. Yeah. He's like, he's only like, 18, 19 or 20 in that dialogue, So he was fucking Chad, man. He was alpha mogging all of the other philosophers at the time. By the way, we have an aspect of this Venn diagram where same and different are together. Like and unlike are together. Whole and part are together in this overlap. So what's Socrates' problem? Yeah, he was just a kid, so, we're not going to be hard on him. Gotta love the Greeks, the only bunch that can make contradictions make sense. But using this map, which we know that Parmenides had as his way of thinking, because he then gave us the map, allowed him to recognize why Socrates had his problem. If whole and part, same and different, are defined together in the second hypothesis, direct experience of oneness, and are used together in the third hypothesis, dialectic or true understanding, Socrates must not be in that world yet. He's using a language or a way of, we always use these terms. Everything is same and different and whole and part and beautiful or fake beauty, beautiful and ugly. Those aren't opposites. Ugly is the fake idea of beauty. We all use them, but we define them differently. That's the incommensurate nature of these hypotheses. So Socrates, if he says, hey, you know how you define like? It's when you're not unlike. You know how how you define unlike? It's that when you're not like something. So they're literally defined as opposites. Seventh hypothesis. Remember that position? The world we're still thinking is still in the realm of mind, but it's a rejection of the logos, the position of the seventh. Thinking, therefore, the world is not a hierarchical arrangement of divisions reflecting from the self. It's a back and forth of equal opposite principles, like and unlike, hot and cold, good guys and bad guys, the devils and the angels, the Christians and the non-Christians, the Jews and the Palestinians. Socrates, therefore, using the map, you can be Parmenides to Socrates and say, hey kid, don't try and mog me with your philosophy maxing, but instead recognize you are using the language of the seventh to make sense of what we are talking about in the second and third. And as we've just said, using the idea of the logos represented as a ratio, the golden ratio, 1 is to 1.62, thereabouts. They are incommensurate. It's a jump. You can't bring with you this way of defining these key terms into this new realm. It's a different realm of existence. And therefore, Parmenides says to Socrates, the only way you're going to be able to progress, the only way anyone progresses, is through learning this dialectic. I'm going to start by giving you the ideal, the first hypothesis of the self. And then I'm going to outline all of the other 8 possible ways of thinking. Your job is to master them. So you can recognize where you're at, recognize the next stage, apply the dialectic to gain understanding and purify the false beliefs from the former, to prepare yourself for those jumps, or sometimes called letting go of one or jumping to the other, because they're a whole different thing. We can map the development through the ox-herding pictures and map the stages through the hypotheses, giving us the ideal, necessary map of development for us and for anyone we care about. We can also recognize that we might mix between different hypotheses as a personality type and map it onto the cube. And then at the end of book 6, Socrates goes ahead and says, hey, by the way, those different things are different cognitive functions. To think through shapes and colors is different from perceiving directly everything all at once, or the whole of all parts. So therefore, I'm going to create a line, and I'm going to divide it up to show the different cognitive functions that you can jump into or out of. That's the divided line. So take a line. Oh, let me catch up with chat. I'm still behind. Parmenides as a dialogue is interesting for me. Ooh, good for you. It is one dialogue that Socrates seems to be the dumb person. Yeah. To be clear, I'm very Greek inspired. My early teachings are all Greek. And then you said lol. That's you.
These absolute dullards, borderline chimps, who want to kiss a fox,
are all those who are not inspired by the Greeks. It's only now that I'm shifting away from their metaphysics. I think the contradictions are beautiful. The line itself, as Plato presents it, is flawed insofar as it isn't a line at all. It is a shadow of a line, which is cool. I do not see any flaws in this, but if there is a flaw, I would love to hear what you're seeing. Because
there's only 2 options at the end of an argument. 1, you're wrong, but now you always get to be right about that topic going forward. So you get to learn something, which is always a plus. Or 2, you're right and you get to revel in being right.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win-win-win.
So if you are seeing anything that's flawed in this, I'd love to hear what it is. So this divided line is, hey, being in the second hypothesis is the greatest cognitive function. Now, we have noticed that there is a puzzle above mind, but that's also a puzzle he leaves us to solve in the divided line. So we're still in the realm of mind and the physical. We're not transcending to the self yet. In fact, what you can do is take these 2 divisions that we've got on this Venn diagram and say, the physical world is down here. Move it down a little bit. The physical world is here. And the realm of mind is here. Now, it also, he also says that the bigness of these divisions relate to, I think it's, now you'll have to verify this for yourself, but if you go into the text and the world of the physical senses, right? he says the size represents divisions in, I think, truth and something else. I forget. I think there are two things he says, and you'll have to find this out for me. But truth and something else, like truth and intelligence or truth and reality or something like that. This is idealism and what is pointing towards my first messages. Oh, how do you mean by idealism? So, in the realm of the mind, take that same ratio and divide that. So we've got about like a third. So divide this by a third and divide this by a third, giving us that and that. Now that, if you're an eagle-eyed viewer, you'll recognize that this and this end up being truth and clarity. Yes, well done. Hooray.
My head is quite large and filled
Filled with secrets.
Your head must be quite large and filled with secrets. Yes, truth and clarity. I think, yeah, that's the ones. Well done. So there's an interesting puzzle. What does it mean that these two are the same size? But we'll leave that for now. The way, the objects, the things that you see, the objects, and the cognitive function, or the way that you see them, cognitive function, are different in each of these. To perceive not the physical world, but the world of mind directly is nous, or what we sometimes call knowledge with a capital N, because it's better just to use the word nous, because knowledge in English doesn't necessarily mean this. But we put a capital K if we want, and knowledge. That's the second hypothesis. So if you want a greater breakdown of these incommensurate levels, what it's like, what it feels like to be in this realm that's non-physical, the divided line can help. The third hypothesis would be there. Notice, you're still in the realm of mind. So when we use understanding, we're not referring to our personal beliefs and opinions. We are using this as the model to inform how we think. How we, like, for example, we are talking about the most important thing. This is the best things that human beings can talk about. But our friend in chat says, oh, I have a different idea. So one of us might be seeing something greater or be missing something. How do we say it? Do we say, well, I believe this? Do we refer to our physical world experiences? And we say, hey, I just believe it to be the so. I was raised by a Christian and he told me that Jesus is always in my penis, and therefore what I'm saying is right. If you think in that way, you are in the fourth hypothesis, referring as your model of truth your personal beliefs. That's my justification or model. If you act in that way, so you get pissed at me because I'm the wrong shape or color, shapes and colors thinkers, you will be rejecting the realm of mind. That's the fifth hypothesis. Shapes and colors, image thinking. Racists, sexists, these numbnuts. Fifth hypothesis. But notice the similarity. Just as beliefs you refer to as the reason why you do this or that. Beliefs become the model for your activity. Model. Which is why we can understand this line as the line we are to move through right now as human beings. Because everyone picks up a false belief from their childhood about their self that defines their whole functioning. Everyone is in the fourth. Everyone, everyone, everyone. The only way out, says Socrates, is to learn this and apply it through the dialectic. The dialectic has two functions: to surface your current unsuspected, you don't know you have it. It has you, you don't have it. You don't have your problem has you. Surface your unsuspected, therefore it requires a method, false beliefs, that is the model to your activity that keeps you in ignorance and functions to get you to not do what we do here. There's a reason why Asmongold has 50,000 Twitch viewers and Hassan Piker has 50,000 Twitch viewers, and I have currently 1. Because our beliefs function in opposition to this movement. Therefore, by virtue of being a human being, we are given the conditions to master the dialectic. To master the dialectic means two things: master the truth and master the false. So, but here's the thing. In the activity of purifying our beliefs, we can gain insight into the true. As above, so below. This was the big bombshell Socrates just dropped. Look at how we can, well, if we go through philosophical midwifery and dream analysis gives us the specifics we need. We can see, hey, all of my activity, the board needs to catch up, has been from some model I didn't know. Maybe that tells us something. If my soul seeks a model of truth and will hold on to it viciously in my problems, maybe that's because the soul seeks the true model of truth and we're supposed to hold on to that and protect that, not viciously, but with courage and character. Therefore, everything that we learn in removing our problems, we can apply to gain insight into what's true. Let me catch up with the chat. I'm a bit behind. Truth and clarity. Yep. Reality is fundamentally mental. Right. So the realm of mind. It does have its physical expression that has a kind of existence as flashing images. Socrates has talked about in the book that we're reading. I think the best thing for contemplation is sake. You're reminding me to top up my drink. Oh, sorry. The sake of contemplation. Well, my drink's empty anyway. I'm going to top it up after this. And if Aristotle is wrong, then goddamn, nothing matters. I'm kidding, kind of. Ooh. Now, Aristotle plays a huge role. Because, I really recommend you go through the old episodes on this channel, because we have talked a lot about how Socrates devolved into Plato and devolved into Aristotle, and Aristotle had huge problems and is kind of stuck in the physical world. But again, not for you to believe. The whole point is to learn this model and see, where did Aristotle end up? Where did Plato end up? Where did Socrates end up? And maybe even it might end up with Socrates being above this line, Plato being above this line, and Aristotle being above this line. Wouldn't it be wild if that was the case? And what would that say about the comedic nature of the unfolding of the human species if Socrates was here, but we killed him, As a result, Plato, who was only in his 20s when we killed Socrates, might have learned a lot about the dialectic, but we killed him before he was able to learn dream analysis and midwifery. So therefore, whatever insight Plato had as a student into the second hypothesis, he wasn't able to fully integrate through the ox herding pictures because he didn't have the method of removing his family beliefs, meaning he wasn't able to reach Socrates' level. And if Aristotle was Plato's student, and Aristotle, hey, modern philosophers call Aristotle the philosopher, his teacher called him the brain. Interesting nickname, right? If Aristotle had a personal belief problem that prevented even a participation in the realm of the mind, but Plato didn't have the method of solving problems because we killed Socrates, could that be why Aristotle ended up as an Aristotelian, a materialist? And if moderns call him the philosopher and our current educational system is based on Aristotle, dividing things in the physical world into its categories while rejecting mind, could that play a role in the nature of ignorance that we face in society? And could that also be why whenever you're on YouTube and you type in philosophy, they're all Aristotelian douches talking about Stoicism is the language of Socrates and Plato, removing mind. They're either in the 6th or 7th hypothesis, or the 4th, 5th, 8th, or 9th. They apply to the physical world, like courage is doing push-ups and eating testicles.
Progress didn't happen because I would scoop the moon in a cup for you.
Oh, that's a nice one. I want the testicle one. I want your testicles. Modern philosophers talk about physical, the language of the virtues. Wisdom is knowing how to scam people for money. Courage is eating bull testicles. Where is it? Eat a pizza.
This is nasty ass pizza. People can change for the better.
Eat a nasty pizza, and you can change for the better. Here we go.
I'm eating the testicles of this bull, and I'm eating it raw.
Right. So the point is, you don't have to believe anything I'm saying. You're not supposed to. But if you can nail down in your own understanding this map for human possibility and human development, you can see where all of the figures that influence you lie. But also, as you might be influenced by Plato sometimes, but then Aristotle, but then think, hey, you said it even yourself, maybe nothing has meaning. You can map your own personality type as 4 of these perhaps that play a role within your life. That's the cube. Sometimes I'm interested in the second, but sometimes I think that it's only you can't actually know reality. It's only a matter of belief. So maybe you're in this. But by the way, the divided line, let me catch up with. Oh yes, if Aristotle was wrong, then goddamn, there's no meaning, nothing matters. I'm kidding, right? But even though you're kidding, that shows that you can gain insight into somebody else's position where it's not kidding from them. Like if you're an Aristotelian, let's say hypothetically, Aristotle represents the physical world. If you start with a belief in the physical world, 4th hypothesis, and then you realize, oh shit, the beliefs I got about religion were all garbage, so we can't know the nature of God. Or maybe beliefs themselves are all garbage. Now I'm a materialist. There's only the physical world. That's it. We're all just atoms, billiard balls banging into each other. Now you're in the 8th hypothesis. But then you think about that position, and well, if we're just physical things and there's no mind or meaning, then there's nothing that's important. Even these parts there's no meaningful activity. So you go from a rejection of the whole self-identity to a rejection of any meaningful activity. so you can trace yourself how someone might move through those hypotheses, ending up into that position that nothing matters. You don't have to feel that way. It can be fun for you.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the
Childlike wonder, dude.
Or a joke, we can joke about it. But it does demonstrate as a principle we can understand anybody's position, so long as we have a map of all positions, and how they may have reached that conclusion. The next step is how we might want to relate to them in a way that can facilitate an upward movement or an anagogic movement to benefit. Or benefit yourself, or your partner, or a loved one. And maybe we'll get some insight by this map, by the oxiding pictures, and by the cube for how to facilitate that. And as you said, also the divided line, because the divided line shows that they are incommensurate jumps. But there is a symmetry, just as we can learn that the model for our understanding, in other words, we learn how to relate better to people from mind, understanding. So notice, nothing on the board is a physical thing. These are all ideas, not concepts, principles. It has scope over the physical. The mind has scope over the physical, so we can apply it to function good in the physical world, to understand all physical souls, all physical problems, all human problems, all individual problems. But just as our problems are caused by our beliefs, so too our understanding is perfected by studying the model. That's dianoia. But notice, see, our understanding is not understanding the physical world, because understanding is on this side of the divided line, the line that refers to mind. Mind. So we are specifically understanding the nature of mind. That's why these are all ideas. That's why you can apply this map to anyone. If you derive your model from the physical world, you're in the realm of beliefs, and you are therefore under here. 4th, 5th, 8th, and 9th hypothesis. Let me catch up. What I do appreciate is that, oh my God, I'm so far behind. Okay, I'm gonna get a drink, and then I'm gonna quick fire through all of your messages, and then I'm gonna respond to them. I guess pick out the most relevant one, because maybe you've answered some of your own questions, but I need to get a drink first. You reminded me about Saki. Yeah. All right, let's catch up. Ideal, yep. Sake. What I do appreciate is that you often tie what you're talking about to contemporary politics, which is super cool. Oh, I'm glad you think so. I'm glad you think so. Yeah, it's good as an analogy to see more clearly, but also, a lot of people I care about care very much about the world, and I want to help them in their pursuits. Also, I wouldn't mind living in a world that was more just. But I have to keep in mind that even though the world might not get on board, even if we only have a few followers, we don't have the hundreds of thousands of Asmongold and Hassan Piker. We can still do what we can in our lifetime for our soul's development through our reincarnation. So, in other words, our development isn't based on others, although it would be nice to help them. That's the education you're offering here. Socratic thinking or Platonic thinking is a way of life, not just a philosophy itself. Yes, and that's something that Socrates is outlining in the book that we're reading. The new class of philosophers are those who can live this philosophy and become exemplars of it too. So, we're also being asked to, well, I guess it goes back to this map as well. So having the ideal of what it would be like at the top of this list is one of our puzzles. Because today we've been talking about the 2nd through the 9th, but there is an ideal beyond that we haven't got into today yet. Because we don't know what it is. It's our puzzle from this book. Is this where you give me a compliment? Here's your compliment.
Kant would say some fucking bullshit.
Kant would say some bullshit.
Hey man, wouldn't some kind of future where people have all their whatever basic needs met, shelter, all this crap, and they could do whatever the hell they want, wouldn't that be good? No, it would.
All of these rights that you get to. Well, that's not true because I don't think so.
I'm looking for a positive one.
Kant's a little fucking bitch.
All we have is the Oracle telling us that Kant's a bitch.
Spit on me.
Okay, calm down, Emma.
Oh,
Jesus.
Very handsome and or pretty.
There you go. You're very handsome and or pretty. Have you read of the inertia, Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics? Changed my life. No, we'll see. What we do here is we learn, before we can use this map to recognize where all other philosophers may lay, Kant, whether or not he's a bitch, Aristotle, whether or not he's a bitch, we have to first learn the model. In other words, a doctor can't learn medicine by studying the opinions of cancer patients. He has to first learn the model of the healthy body, which includes knowing the model of the healthy body and understanding his parts. Then he can look at all of the other variations of it and determine its kind of sickness. That's what we do here. There are only few people who have reached a level of mastery of the Logos such that has recognized this principle and has spent their time mastering this map. Parmenides, Diotima, those are Socrates' teachers. Before them, Homer seems to have a mastery of this, and thankfully we are getting the Odyssey translated properly for the first time in human history, modern human history. So we can get into that and see if we can see this soul development mapped dramatically through the Odyssey. And also the Iliad does a similar thing. So Homer aside, Parmenides and Diotima, or Socrates' teacher Xenophanes, that's only three before Socrates, well, 4 including Homer. And then of course Socrates. But the issue is they didn't write anything down. Or we only have a small passage from Xenophanes other than that. Well, Homer. Plato, as we've talked about, didn't get there, it seems. So other than Socrates, who we do have, Socrates and Homer, we have written things from, because we have, thankfully Plato was able to transcribe dialogue Socrates had, and Dr. Pierre Grimes, someone who rediscovered for himself these same principles of philosophical midwifery through his own study of mastery of philosopher. He was a PhD in philosophy. He was one of the first. Him and Alan Watts were best buddies, well, good friends, and they were the earliest Westerners to study Eastern spirituality, Western intellectuals. Became Buddha, reached the highest stage of enlightenment within their tradition, but also discovered that Socrates went beyond. So what we do here is we learn, we are reading first from those who know the ideal, the Logos, which pretty much is 2 things. 3. Socrates and Pierre Grimes. We're currently reading a book by Pierre Grimes. We've also read books by Socrates, Plato's transcriptions of what Socrates said. We can get into a Homer as well. So other than those three, that's about it. Now that's important because at school, they don't teach you that. They just dump a whole bunch of stupid fucking opinions on your head and say, you work it out. But that's stupid. They do that because our society is run by religious, conservative capitalists who want us to remain ignorant to truth. For example, notice that Donald Trump is a Nazi fascist and he's exploiting everyone and doing horrible things to lots and lots of people. Why aren't the establishment Democrats doing anything? Because we are told at school that philosophy is just picking a book that resonates with you. I like Kant, I like Nietzsche. Who the fuck cares? They are in the fifth hypothesis. They don't understand that there is a universal, true paradigm of what fucking helps people and an objective, testable understanding of that paradigm such that they allow the most sick, fucked up individuals to take power in our society. That's insane. You wouldn't let someone say, well, I read this book and I like this book of dentistry, so I'm a dentist. Give me a hammer. I'm going to start smashing children's faces in. No, there isn't an opinion about dentistry or opinion about medicine or opinion about how to fly a plane. It's a true, understandable thing. You have to demonstrate an apprehension of the model of how surgery works or how dentistry works and an application of its activity, model and activity, ousia and logos. The reason we are living in an unjust society, we are living in Hades, is because we haven't acknowledged that. And one reason is because we're in the tradition of Aristotle, who is in love with his own stupid ass opinions. Opinions don't mean anything other than a message about your own ignorance you're here to address. Understanding means things. When you learn how to be a vet, you don't want the opinions of this or that. You want to remove your opinions and develop understanding. You can't help puppies if you think that puppies come when cats and dogs get married. Dogs are the boys, cats are the girls. Some children think that, but you can't simultaneously carry your beloved beliefs and be a vet because those beliefs are in a level inconsistent, incommensurate with truth and understanding. Our current education system is a brainwashing tool because those who seek to maintain their power are the most fervently attached to their ignorance. Their fourth hypothesis, false beliefs about justice, self, and reality. That's why they burned books. That's why the Dark Ages happened. That's why we allow for religion to exist, which is just another brainwashing tool and abuse of children, and will bring an end to society. Because they want to, because that's when fucking Jesus comes back or some bullshit. It's sick. Similarly, we need to wake up and say, before we get into Kant or Nietzsche or Hegel, let's learn the truth. That's why we read what we read here. To gain a model of the truth so that we can recognize, oh, Hegel was here. Nietzsche was down here, 9th. Aristotle was here in the 5th. Plato reached the 2nd. That's important because here's a newsflash. Not all opinions are right and not all opinions are equal. Of course they fucking aren't. My uncle's racist opinions are not as equal as my auntie's, New Age opinions. And her New Age opinions aren't the same as Plato's opinions. That's why we read what we read here. That's why I won't ever get 50,000 viewers like Asmongold, her son Piker. Because we're not talking about beliefs. Not interested in opinions. We're interested in truth and understanding. Truth and understanding, second and third hypothesis, challenges fourth hypothesis, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth, where everyone else is. But it's a challenge worth taking. We will develop courage and character as we take on this challenge necessarily, which is part of our learning. Everything we learn, we can benefit from. That's the significance of the providence of the third hypothesis. So again, we just got a little insight into the third hypothesis. Oh, it's providence. Can we get an insight into its seventh, the rejection? If providence is how we benefit by understanding, what does seventh hypothesis say? Oh, hey, there is no providence. It's just fighting endlessly. Seventh hypothesis, the world is a battleground between the forces of good and evil that will play out endlessly. There's no meaningful development. It's all irrational and cruel and harsh, is what happens if you reject what we just said about providence. Notice, every insight you get into one, you can wonder about what happens in its reflection. Yeah. Hope that. Oh, and I don't mean that personally. Notice, anyone who's not Socrates or Pierre Grimes would fit into that category. Except for maybe Homer. And that's about the whole list. That's the whole list of things you can read to gain the model. I didn't make that up. I didn't decide that. It just happens to be true. But a truth that you can understand for yourself and verify for yourself. And I hope I use those examples and analogies to demonstrate why it must necessarily be true. Talking about my uncle, the racist, and my auntie, the New Ager. Talking about doctors, they first need the ideal before they can realize who's sick. Talking about why it's difficult to accept that when they don't teach you how to think properly at school. Here's Kant. Well, was he right? I don't fucking know. Well, why are we reading him? Oh, because you know what happens? You come to school and you will learn a bunch of quotes that you will use to verify and justify the stupid fucking ignorance you came in with. That's philosophy, son. You'll be a good debater. You'll get a job for a CEO, and you can use that same way of being where you use quotes from authorities, the law as a lawyer or a politician to justify the position you already hold and you want to be true because you think you profit from it. That's capitalism. Not about what actually helps people. It's about bullshitting people to prove what you already think. Oh, you know what else that is? Religion. Every fucking religious preacher is different. They all have their different opinions. There are millions of different religious beliefs. Millions of different people who claim to be a preacher or a pastor or a minister or an imam or a rabbi. None of them agree. They all do the same thing. They use whatever is the official book to prove their ignorant beliefs. That's also our education. That's also our political system. That's what debate is. We are learning the dialectic. So if the philosopher doesn't make central as his teaching the dialectic, he's not a true philosopher. Another reason why Pierre Grimes, Socrates, are really the only people you can read if you want to understand how to develop. But notice, even the oxiding pictures is a kind of structure or system for spiritual development from Zen Buddhism. But we won't be able to make it intelligible unless we first have an understanding of the dialectic and then apply it to the oxiding pictures, allowing us to use this map to recognize, oh, the first and second oxiding pictures aren't actually spiritual states. They are fourth hypothesis and below. We wouldn't be able to recognize that unless we had the understanding to bring along with it. Just like, unless you have the model of medicine, you won't be able to recognize the most healthy patient you have and the least healthy patient. The oxiding pictures might be the most healthy, but they're not the ideal without the logos. Sake is cool. Yes.
I would scoop the moon in a cup for you.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you for saying sake is cool and I would scoop the moon. Speaking of quotes. Okay, just making sure. My favorite streamer isn't streaming. I agree that Aristotle devolved into Plato, but I was saying the opposite. That Plato was able to reach maybe these levels, to some degree. But of course, he had a teacher who was doing midwifery with him along the way. Aristotle didn't have such a teacher. In principle, human beings have to go through. This is why we have to develop a hypothesis map of interpretation. Because every stage of development comes with a counterattack. So we have the dialectic applies to the logos and our pathologos, our false beliefs of self and reality that causes a fear of mind and a loyalty to our beliefs, causing our harm and sadism as a race. The logos is the development of intelligence and care, or providence, empathy and understanding. So while we're using the hypotheses of Parmenides and the Oxherding pictures to map the development of the logos, Socrates in this book is saying you and me and all of us have to do a similar thing to allow for an understanding of our pathologos responses to every stage of development, or our counterattacks. In other words, how we don't accept truth but interpret it. The hypotheses of interpretation. Accompanying Oxherding pictures of how we move through those stages. So anyone in principle who is not doing both philosophical midwifery and philosophy itself, the dialectic, the logos and pathologos, will be blocked. Plato's teacher was doing both, allowing him to reach a certain level. But he was in his 20s when we killed him, so not all the way. Aristotle, his teacher didn't have midwifery. So as soon as his beliefs kicked in opposition for his ability to have even a glimpse of pure mind, his counterattack was too strong. Therefore, Aristotle stayed in the physical world, necessarily, by principle. Which is why we can use, generally speaking, if the physical world is these four hypotheses, we can personify that with Aristotle. Mind, Plato. Self, Socrates. He maintains a physicalist metaphysics, says Cheddar, which is more palatable for me. Yeah. So he will relate to the position that you're at more, which will be the physical world. 4th, 5th, 8th, or 9th. No world of forms. Now, even the word form is the same problem as Socrates had. The word isn't form. Form is a physical word. So you're applying language of these four hypotheses to try and make sense of this hypothesis. You're using 4th, 5th, 8th, and 9th language to make sense of the second hypothesis, which was Socrates' problem at the beginning of the Parmenides. Again, it's not blaming you. That's our education system. After we killed Socrates and things devolved into Aristotle, Emperor Justinian came along in 529 AD, shut down the academy, murdered the philosophers, and instilled belief, the very cause of human ignorance, suffering, and savagery, and outlawed understanding, bringing in the Dark Ages where everything went to shit. And that's our current system, in the tradition of religion and Aristotle, physicalism, materialism, and religious belief. That's why our world's about to end. Our species is about to end. We are playing out the implications of a rejection of truth and understanding, a rejection of our purpose. We are seeing the tragic implications of our species if we reject the logos and embrace the pathologos. That's it. Two things, logos and pathologos. One thing, dialectic. We are seeing what happens if you reject the dialectic. That's it. So the word is eidos. The mistranslation is forms. Eidos means to behold. Because they are the intellectual understanding, distinctions that you can make about that experience of beholding pure consciousness, pure mind. It's experienced as a oneness, but intellectually, and maybe even at the moment, if you have integrated the dialectic understanding in your state of being, you might even be able to recognize that even this oneness has qualities, not parts, aspects, not forms, eidos, aspects. Just as the example I give is, hey, let's say you're skydiving. Now, as you're skydiving, all of the physical principles are applying. There's atomic forces, there's electromagnetic forces, there's friction forces. Now, the aspect of reality that you're experiencing most is wind resistance, because you're jumping out of a plane. All of the other things are present. You might be most focused on wind resistance, but you can't have that without the other. You need electromagnetic forces and gravity and friction and all that for you to have wind resistance. That's a fun analogy I like to think about. So you might experience divine luminosity as beauty itself, but then you might meet a philosopher who says, oh, by the way, did it exist? Oh yeah. Oh, so it's another quality, pure existence. By the way, did you recognize yourself? Oh yeah. Oh, so some sort of intelligence allowing for that recognition. Were you turning upon yourself and experiencing yourself as pure beauty? Oh yeah, ousia. Was it all perfectly ordered the way it necessarily had to be? Oh yeah, justice. So whatever kind of experience is most full for you or most on the tip of your tongue, in that experience, you can engage in third hypothesis reflection on that luminosity experience to infer the other aspects. All of those aspects are the building blocks for understanding. Hey, was that experience a oneness? Yeah, it was. Did it have all of the parts? Whole of all parts. Everything you've ever seen is a whole of parts. When you think, you talk about the whole of the can and the parts that I open to drink a can. So the building blocks of all understanding, all perception, and all existence are the aspects of the second hypothesis. The fun thing is you get to experience them. And the more you experience them, the better you can use them. So your second hypothesis bliss experience of knowing eternity perfect your third hypothesis functioning in the world to your friends or beyond this world, because it's this kind of learning we're here to do. It's the only thing we can take with us. The learning and nurture of the third hypothesis, perfected in the second experience. By the way, Socrates goes on to say in the book, if you apply one to the other, you can see that even this has a cause, allowing you to go beyond the second to the first, beyond the greatest experience to the seer that's seeing it. That's the conversation Socrates is having with Jesus at the moment, and that's why he's being triggered. He is triggered because he's being asked to relate to a world outside of even his peak experience. The other difficulties Jesus has been having in this text is he is not really understanding third hypothesis, his experience. He's also still holding on to his bullshit beliefs that he doesn't even know he's holding on to. So he's still in the fourth. So he's in a little bit of the second, a little bit of the third, a little bit of the fourth, well, a lot of the fourth, really. And he's being asked to relate to the first. And as we've seen, if you are asking someone to relate to a stage beyond where they're at, ideally we would be open and curious, but we also have to face our counterattacks. Thankfully, he's talking to Socrates. Now, we're close to the end of the book, so maybe there's not much time for Socrates to specifically midwife Jesus, but he has been giving us the principles of midwifery through this book. So maybe you can do a sequel of this book where Socrates reflects with Jesus on the nature of his trigger, the nature of his problem, the nature of his counterattack, and goes through that philosophical midwifery process, which might be necessary for Jesus to move from the second to the first. That would be you being the new kind of philosopher, contributing to the tradition, adding to where we're at. I look forward to reading your book. I find Aristotle is, I think my teacher was wrong, and then he ultimately reaches the same conclusion. Yeah, funny. But most of my current work is Aristotelian inspired. You're well read, and I respect that. Okay. We're learning how to read. That's the difference. Learning how to read. It's not that I'm well read and that I've read a lot of things. It's that the one or two things I have read, I've learned how to read properly. It's like Hunter x Hunter. That the guy who fights Meruem at the end, he does like the one punch like 100,000 times, and then he develops the Bodhisattva fist, the Buddha fist or whatever. Do the one activity really, really well. I'm one of those terrible physicalists, but I know Aristotle ideas come from Plato, no doubt. Yeah, well, they're all derived. So, just as the second hypothesis, divine luminosity, it's not real. It's the greatest experience of reality. It's not real. You'll think it's real, absolutely. In fact, there are whole spiritual traditions like Taoism that are based on the idea that there can't be anything greater than this experience, and they're right. It's not real. When you look at yourself in the mirror, that's not real. It might be the greatest experience of yourself in vision. It's not you. It's missing so many things. Higher things, incommensurate things. Your reflection doesn't have your will, your intelligence, your goals, your dreams. These are all higher things than just shapes and colors. So too, even this greatest experience of reality is a reflection of its cause. That's the principle that Socrates is talking about currently in the text. As above, so below. But as, the word is as. Likeness. As. A shepherd is to his sheep as a king is to his subjects. Likeness. In other words, from this greatest experience, we need to reflect on it, understanding, and imagine through analogy what it is like, analogy, as a reflection of the greater. That's how we become open and curious and receptive to our movement, to our jumps. The incommensurate jumps requires us to understand our position and the next position and wonder about how it can be as above, so below. That's what Socrates is saying to Jesus. That's, by the way, he says it's dangerous. It's almost always met with scorn, and you have to be very highly intelligent for you to accept it and not reject this. Because necessarily it challenges everyone. Because you're saying everyone's position is one of these 8. And to say as above, so below means your position isn't it. You're challenging, by definition, you're challenging everyone. No wonder it's met with scorn. Hey, your position? Oh yeah, the one that you think is right. Oh yeah, I'll die for my religion, or I'll die for my racist beliefs, or I'll die for my MAGA Trump loyalty. Yeah, by the way, that's below. What? Yeah, as above, so below. You are reflecting in a lower position in a negative or distorted way principles from the higher. So there's some things you can learn about from your position, but it's not literal. Literalism is the problem. Analogy is the solution. Now, I don't know if you've met a racist or a religious person or a fundamentalist. They don't take too kindly to the idea that they don't know everything. Therefore, as above, so below is the principle that challenges everyone. Necessarily, because we wouldn't be stuck in our position unless we were afraid of the better positions. Otherwise, we would have just fucking listened to Socrates. We would have embraced philosophers the same way we embraced LeBron James. It's the human condition. We reject anything that opposes our way of being that we grew up with as a baby, as a child, as an infant, as a toddler. It requires courage and character to recognize your position isn't it. And the next position isn't it. And the position after that isn't it. Until you reach it. And then, ideally, maybe turn around and help others up that ladder. So yes, so even if Aristotle was a fifth hypothesis person, rejecting the principles of Plato, that fifth hypothesis, activity, is a reflection, a diminished reflection, a distorted reflection of the third. Just as the fourth is a reflection of the second. Why? Model and activity, which is also demonstrated on the divided line. Just as nous, the cognitive function of being in the second, is the model for the cognitive function of the third, understanding, so too, beliefs is the model for image thinking. So if Aristotle is in the fifth hypothesis, image thinking, it's a kind of reflection of the third, in that it's an activity that reflects a model. Only his model is his physical world experience and his beliefs he'd got from his mummy and daddy. What we want to do is recognize every human being does that, because every human being grew up with a kind of mummy and daddy figure. Parental figure of some kind. Purify. Oh, but you know, heard those jokes? Yo mama is so fat. Why is that a joke? Because we recognize every human being, doesn't matter how fucking stupid or cruel or sadistic or Nazi their mother was, loves them. Dogs, we're dogs. Blindly loyal to whoever our master was, until we learn how to make use of our own intelligence and see our parental figures for what they were, which is not to be mean, it's to be honest and true. It will also allow us to help them should they be a rare kind of person who wants to be better in the world. And let's hope they do. That's why it's a challenge. Not my teacher, not my imam, not my preacher, not my rabbi, not my Mormon magic underpants man. Not my mummy, not my daddy. Aristotle was there, reflecting the principles of Plato, who was here. As above, so below. Isn't that interesting? We understand why people get triggered, why we have problems, and also how to get out of them. Analogy. Requiring an understanding of your position, that's the dialectic and the logos. Wondering about it, how it can reflect the higher. There's no method to that. That's just having fun, imagining. Analogy. Where's the joy? Where's the fun? When's the whimsy,
Where's
dude?
the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the
Childlike wonder, dude.
And the second part of that, the necessary complementary part, is to do the same thing on your false beliefs that will surface as in opposition to that meaningful activity. Your counterattack. We do both. So we're not blaming Aristotle for being stuck. He didn't have a teacher. We're not blaming Plato for not being a teacher to Aristotle. We killed his teacher. We killed Socrates. We can do better. We can use this model and map and this new way of reading to recognize the sort of person we absolutely need for each of our development. Hey, do you want to not be sad? You need this guy. Even billionaires don't want to be sad. Even those who oppress people through religion don't want to be sad. Even those who oppress people through conservatism don't want to be sad. Do you want to be happy? You need this person. We all want to not be sad and be happy. Therefore, every single one of us needs this person. Dialectician. Socratic dialectician. You want your species to survive? Do you want your loved ones to be happy as well? Therefore, we can do better. Recognize the necessity of a Socratic dialectician for our species, for our society, and for our individual selves and loved ones. And give them, hey, find the richest man in the world. Transfer all his wealth to this person. Use all of the military budget in the world, and instead of using it to inflict injustice and suffering for personal profit, use it to protect this man. Distribute resources properly. All of the money spent to buy building stadiums for basketball players or NFL players, same thing. Spend at least as much on places for people to come and learn this together. And maybe even have demonstrations in public and have a big celebration. Have everyone come together and present their dreams. Like Burning Man. A big event. Where everyone's little tent or caravan has the poster of their dream analysis. As you've done dream analysis, do it on a big poster board. And so people come by, oh, that's an interesting dream. Tell me about that. You can talk to your friends about your art. This is what I saw in my dream. About my problem and about my insight. My logos and pathologos. Wonderful. Go to the next. Oh, that's an interesting dream. Burning Man. But for truth. Have the culmination, or have every evening have a Socratic philosopher give a demonstration. Either on the logos or the pathologos. Or dream analysis. Do a dream. In front of everyone. Now, dreams are wonderful because one of the many reasons why dreams are wonderful is even though it'll be personally significant to the dreamer, every single person present will find a meaningful relevance to their own development. Imagine that with like a 100,000 people stadium. It's not a blame game, but we can do better. I'm a philosopher man, so you're a philosopher man. Ooh, like Spider-Man. You were bitten by a radioactive philosopher, and you have developed all of the powers of a philosopher, making you Philosopher Man!
My head is
Quite large, filled with secrets.
Your catchphrase is, my head is quite large and filled with secrets. So when I say I'm kidding, I'm not. My current work is rendered bullshit, which means all I think I know what go to shit. My life purpose would be meaningless for a while at least. Oh, so what we're doing is understanding the principle of meaning. Meaning would have to be, there is some purpose to your existence. That purpose would have to not just be, indiscriminate suffering or pain. That would be indiscriminate pain would be suffering. There must be a reason for you to be where you are, doing what you're doing, which means a kind of learning. Necessarily, therefore, for meaning, there has to be logos. That learning has to benefit you. Therefore, there has to be a hierarchical stage of development. Therefore, for you to be meaning is just to recognize these hypotheses. Meaningful life. How do you move through them? Dialectic. Where do you learn the dialectic? This channel, where we read bangers of books. Books are goddamn banger. And we have fun talking about it and drawing lovely pictures on the board and funny sound drops.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
Kant would say some fucking bullshit.
See, that's funny.
This is why I love this channel, man.
From the ground efforts start progress didn't happen to people like in fact, unbelievable sluts these days.
See, that's funny. Unbelievable sluts these days.
Get the fuck out.
Get the fuck out.
What is this? The damn Opie and Anthony? Okay, whatever.
Sorry, it is a bit of Opie and Anthony. The divided line itself is a shadow of a line. What do you mean by that? It's a metaphor to illustrate. So yeah, okay, I think I can say this idea. So a shadow is a two-dimensional representation of an idea, which I guess would be a third-dimensional thing or fourth-dimensional thing, which represents the incommensurate movement, which would be a fourth-dimensional movement. So it's a map. So the map itself as a concept is a one dimension. You can reflect it as a shadow, I suppose, in a two-dimensional drawing, but the map is supposed to be applied to getting there. Just as a map of how to get to LA is a two-dimensional representation of an idea of what you're supposed to do to get to an actual place, but it ain't the place itself. But still a handy map. Helps us to understand this. The Democrats are mailbags. All they do is run on a ticket of I'll be better than Trump and missing the purpose. They're fighting for what they shouldn't be. They aren't fighting for. Absolutely. They're not fighting for what they should be fighting for. Milk bags. Absolutely. No principles. The fifth. Look, you can look at it in terms of just these five. The fifth, a physical world activity that functions in opposition to mind. Or, if you expand it out, seventh, there are no principles. Fuck you. Get my bag. I'm not fighting for what I should be fighting for. The Democrats are in the seventh hypothesis, fighting against the third. There is no true understanding. There is no standard we have to hold every single politician to, the same way we hold every pilot, every mechanic, every doctor, every architect, every surgeon to. It's just all make-em-ups and lying and scamming. Fuck you. You're in the seventh. Grow the fuck up. Hey, not just grow the fuck up, you shouldn't be a politician. You can't oppose the principle of politics and be a politician. There are no fucking doctors who become doctors just to say, I don't believe in medicine. Then you're in the wrong job, you idiot. How many politicians say, I don't believe in understanding and principles? One rule for you, one rule for me. I don't believe in equality. Some of them are saying, I don't even believe in politics themselves. Fucking libertarians and conservatives. Diminish the government. Insane. Anyway, getting a bit carried away.
All of these rights that you get to enjoy, all of these civil liberties that are protected, happen because people stood up and said something.
Right. So that's okay. I'm okay to be worked up because I'm standing up and saying something. Here I will say, how far? Oh, I'm not that far behind. I'm catching up. I've read Plato. Have you read the Balboa translation? Because there's a fun thing we say on this channel. If you're not reading the Balboa translation, you're not reading Plato. Just as we said, just as Socrates had a worldview that had a language that prevented him from listening to the language of Parmenides and Zeno, so too, all of the translators have been in these or these hypotheses, meaning the words that have been translated have been mistranslations. The fundamental key words that represent the third, the second, and the first, the very point of the texts, have been blocked by every single translator up until now. Why? because human problems are caused by the fourth hypothesis. The fourth hypothesis functions in opposition to those three. So while Socrates is saying, you need these three, let me talk about them, that's all he did in Plato, none of it's going to get through. It requires a translator to go through philosophical midwifery, to go through a reflection and a removal of their false beliefs, and spend their life developing first, second, and third understanding to be able to translate. If I gave you a medical text in German and you spoke German, and I said, translate this to English, could you do it? Or do you have to have some knowledge of medicine? Otherwise, it'll kind of won't make sense and your translation is going to be all over the place. Same thing for philosophy. If you don't know the logos, how can you translate the logos? Not only that, if you're one of those anti-vax, MAGA, conned, grifted idiots who don't believe in medicine because Donald Trump says so, because Brainworm McGee says so, not only do you not have the understanding to translate it, you are in opposition to it. That's every translator up until now. Thankfully, we have a translator who did go through this process named Juan Balboa, meaning you can read Plato properly if you read the Juan Balboa translation. You can find copies online. So hooray. By the way, it's so much fucking better. I tried to read Plato growing up and it sucked. This is so much better. The reason why it sucked is because the words aren't there, the puzzles aren't there, and the solutions to the puzzles. It's like playing Resident Evil. I need the blue key to go through this first gate. Ah, but the developer removed the blue key. Why? I don't know. Shut up. What? How do I get through the gate? Fuck you? How about fuck you? That's reading Plato without Juan Balboa. Now, you might fill in the gaps with your own personal beliefs, or you might go to college and a professor might give you his beliefs about why you can't go through that gate. But that's all make-em-ups, interpretation. So, check out Juan Balboa stuff. If you're read Nick and McKinley Ethics, I think you can't draw conclusions you are drawing right now. Well, we'll see. Do people use Aristotle to argue bullshit? Yes. Is Aristotle incorrect in a lot of ways? Also yes. But you're kind of presupposing the validity of those who came before. Presupposing the validity. So I'm not saying that what Socrates has said is valid because I'm presupposing it. I'm saying it because it's true. The question is, how do you determine what's true? It's like saying, going to a mechanic and saying, well, my uncle has this opinion about how to fix my engine. He says, pray to Jesus and then donate money to Buddha and then bow to Allah and then your engine will be fixed. And I'll say, well, no. There is actually a right way of fixing your engine. You're presupposing that. I don't think presupposing is the right word. I can see it's true. It can be demonstrated it's true. You can understand it for yourself because it's no one's gatekeeping. It's just see it. But you have to go through the steps. If you cross your arms and saying, no, I am loyal to my daddy and I'm only going to do the Jesus, Buddha, Abraham way of fixing engines, then that's where you end. You will live a life playing out the implications of that ignorance to your sad states of mind and your bad functioning. You won't reach your purpose or destiny. You'll be stuck in fate. You'll pass on your ignorance to those you have influence over if you have kids. And your soul will play out the implications of living a life of injustice inflicted upon others. I hope you don't. That's why I do this channel. To give people an opportunity to learn, overcome their problems and reach their excellence. But, you know, the idea comes down to what makes something true. What is it that allows me to say, oh, that's true? This is true. Not presupposing it. It's verifiable. I'm not online philosophy, to be clear. You can respond to these first, please. I'm not online philosophy, bro, to be clear. Oh, no, I don't think you're an online... Sorry, no. There isn't going to be any red pill philosophy bro person on this channel. No fucking way. The only people who are going to be able to engage in this kind of a conversation are people who are very much different. Rare sorts of people. No. But in saying that, it's going to be challenging. It's like, if you've joined an NBA team and you're training for the finals and you've got a flaw in your game, you're double dribbling. Your coach isn't going to be, well, I know you like dribbling the basketball this way, and I know it's your favorite way of doing it, but no, they'll say, no, look, I'm going to be honest with you. Stop double dribbling. You idiot. Maybe not you idiot. You stop double dribbling. Like, I know you picked up this bad habit from your last coach, but it's going to cost us the championship. I'm not going to be mean about it, I hope, but I'm not going to lie about it. And I'm not going to pussyfoot around. I'm going to be honest. Yeah, you're double dribbling. I can help you see why you're double dribbling by pointing to maps. I can help you walk you through why you might have come to that conclusion that it's good to double dribble. I can help you see for yourself the implications of double dribbling. But I'm not going to lie. So we can't get anywhere if we lie. So it does require courage and character. Because if I'm saying you're double dribbling and you grew up in a family of double dribblers and all you know is double dribbling and your identity is I am Mr. Double Dribbler, you're going to be pissed. You're going to be mad at me. Going to want to cancel me or whatever. Do it anyway. Stay anyway. Try it anyway. Look at your dreams anyway. Try and read the text anyway. That's courage. Courage is following the logos even when you don't think it's true or it doesn't feel true. But also, going through all these stages, you will go through the ox herding pictures, the challenge you have in catching the ox, the challenge you have in taming the ox, the challenge you have in mastering the ox, the traveling challenge you have in riding the ox and being able to help others along the way, the challenge you have in going beyond the ox to what is even the cause of mastery of the mind. But you'll feel it. It won't just be a shadow or a map or a model. Meaning you'll be able to better help others along the way. Loved ones, partner, the world. Imagine meeting anyone at any time, in any galaxy, on any planet, in any dimension, and being able to bring this, the greatest of all arts, with you, to be able to recognize them where it's at, where they're at, meet them where they're at, and have fun helping them along the way. So no, I absolutely do not consider you a philosophy bro. They wouldn't even come close to this channel. They would take the long sentences I use and the lack of doing 6-7 memes as boring. I mean, I have some fun sound drops.
I'm sorry that you have a loser mentality about progress and you think that there's nothing you can do about it.
I'm too pure. That's anti-feminist in some way.
She's a moron. She's a bonked on the head individual, BHI.
I coined that.
See, that's fun for me. Be even more fun when I organize my sound drops properly. But other than that, no, I don't think that. The opposite. You're very much at the other end of the spectrum. But again, it's going to be challenging. Literally, the book that we're reading is Socrates talking to Jesus. Jesus, one of the rare people of his time who's had a glimpse into the second hypothesis. If it's a glimpse, maybe third ox herding picture. But no one around him and no one in his tradition was able to have that glimpse. Therefore, they were left trying to make sense of something they don't even know. They were in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th hypotheses. So very influential figure of our society, Jesus. And Socrates, who obviously reached the top. So the two of the best people ever having a conversation, and even this is causing a challenge. Jesus being asked to reflect on the cause as above, so below of his peak experience, which he's identifying with, is challenging him. So that's the principle of this channel. Anyone is welcome, so long as you try and have fun in an open, curious state of mind, trying to understand your positions, trying not to take them literally, but wondering about how they can be an analogical reflection of a higher stage. Having fun with imagination and analogy. But the ticket into the club is, I'm not going to baby you. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to treat you like an infant. But I was a PhD philosopher and I taught at colleges. Don't say that academic philosophy is bad because I'm a teacher. No. Sorry about your fifis. I'm not being mean to you by telling you the fucking truth, but I'm not going to lie, because how the fuck? If you want someone to lie to you, there are hundreds of thousands of YouTube channels and podcasts and Twitch streams that will lie to you for clicks or money or viewership. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to baby you. I'm not going to be mean to you. But I'm not going to be polite, if polite means being dishonest. So it's challenging, it's fun, but you're also getting the real shit.
You have the brain of a child if you think that.
If you get upset, then you have a brain of a child.
He's so far up his own ass.
Oh my god, not me.
Anything for a click, no matter how stupid or demented or misleading.
That's the other channels. Do everything for a click.
Dumbass.
And they're dumbass. Yes, the truth. It's just philosophy in the different Ds. I don't know what that means. Because you're behind on chat, I think you might misunderstand my last message I was meant to say. Right, I understand. I appreciate that. Another reason not to take anything I say personally, because I might not be relating to the right thing, but I will try my best to relate it to what we're reading. So yeah, I think you might misunderstand me. Yeah, I enjoyed hanging out. I hope you have a good one. I have to go. I also have to go. But love to explain what I mean properly another time. Yes, let's do that. So, that is a good place to sign off for today. A nice overview of where we're at. A reminder of our puzzles. How does the first hypothesis and the 9th and 10th Oxherding pictures fit above this line? Does this map help us understand why Jesus might be struggling? And hey, Jesus has had a glimpse of the second, his transfiguration experience. Is that different from Plato? Because Plato doesn't seem to be triggered. Therefore, can we recognize the stages of development of any one of these within the Oxherding pictures? If that's the case, can we say, hey, someone who's had a taste of understanding, is that different than someone who's a master dialectician? Therefore, can we apply the Oxherding principles pictures as principles for any development within the hypotheses? Therefore, when we go back to the Oxherding pictures, if every stage is a incommensurate jump to the next, a different cognitive function on the divided line, can we even see that jump within the Oxherding pictures? Could that be the jump from 8 to 9, maybe? Therefore, could we recognize there are stages of development within each stage and a necessary jump to each stage, requiring us to map the Oxherding pictures and hypotheses together? Second, do we also have to do that same thing for our pathologos counterattacks? Are there stages of interpretation for each of these? And are there developments? Do you develop from one completely rejecting it to being open to it, to try and taking a little piece of it, to try and keep your old, but then completely jumping? So is there a kind of hypotheses of counterattacks that we also could move through like oxiding pictures for each of them. In other words, how are we going to map the pathologos hierarchy? As we've been talking about today, without that, Plato was stuck. Without that, Aristotle was stuck. Without that, we're not solving human problems. And I used to have a sound drop,
Cool as a cuke.
but now it's that. It was the guy from Some More News, which is a great YouTube channel, saying, no one seems to be learning or solving problems. Learning or growing or actually solving human problems. This is how you do it. That's the map. And finally, one more thing to take with you on your day, the cube. There isn't much said about the cube, but if we can map four of these 8 hypotheses onto the faces of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, onto these 6 faces, could they represent personality types? What will that mean about movements? Can we map movements from one face to another? What does it mean about our day? The cube is a really fantastic mystery to wonder about. So, we'll take all of this great reflection with us next time into seeing how our Socrates responds to Jesus' counterattack, what we can learn about Jesus' counterattack, and how Jesus responds to Socrates. And then we're almost at the end of the text, which means we might be ready to move on to the final oxiding picture we haven't addressed yet, bringing with us everything that we've understood to date and our problems. Where's the first hypothesis? Where's the 9th and 10th oxiding picture? In relation to this map? If the 8th seems to be the second hypothesis, and is there a... Let's put this on the board. Where's the 9th and 10th ox picture? And finally, is there a 11th and 12th hypotheses that we can add that function in opposition to those 2 levels of self? So we take all that with us to finishing the oxiding pictures, finishing the text, and also one more marvelous mystery for us. The author of this book, one of the 2 or 3, Homer, Socrates, Pierre Grimes, one of those 2, Homer is maybe, those 2 or 3 people who have mastered the Logos did a revision of those oxiding pictures from Zen Buddhism to include the word Logos in there. So, after we finish the text, address that final oxiding picture, see if we get any solutions to our puzzles, we can even go on to read that. The modern philosophy update of the oxiding pictures. That's exciting. I hope you've got something to wonder about. And if you want to join the Discord, there's a link below. If you want to link to the PDF, there's a link below. If you want to donate to the channel, that is a huge help, and there's a link below. If you want to follow on Twitch, that is a help as well, because if I get an average of 3 viewers, we have some perks that will help people watch the stream on their phones. And I'll see you in the next one. And then I press the button that doesn't work half the time for some reason.